Has there ever been a more profound or unsettling question than the one that stares back at us from the silent, star-filled canvas of the night sky? Are we truly alone? This single inquiry has echoed through the halls of human history from the first time our ancient ancestors gathered around a fire and looked up in wonder. It is a question that has fueled our greatest scientific endeavors, inspired our most beautiful works of art, and given rise to our deepest spiritual beliefs. But what if the clues to answering this cosmic riddle have been scattered across our planet all along, hidden not in future technologies, but in the crumbling texts and enduring myths of our distant past? What if the stories we have long dismissed as mere folklore and primitive superstition are actually a fragmented record of contact, a celestial message left for us to decipher? Today, we are setting out on an expedition to decode that very message. We are about to embark on an epic journey that will carry us across vast continents and dive deep into the flowing river of time itself. Our mission is to explore 30 of the most astonishing, mind-bending ancient legends of celestial beings ever recorded by human civilization. We will stand with the mystics of ancient India and listen to the thunderous descriptions of Vimanas, the legendary flying chariots that traversed the heavens as detailed in the Sanskrit epics. We will travel to the dense jungles of Central America to decipher the intricate cosmology of the Maya, a people who communicated with sky gods like Kukulkan, the feathered serpent who descended from the stars. From the enigmatic Dogon tribe of Mali, who possessed inexplicable astronomical knowledge of the Sirius star system millennia before modern telescopes, to the fiery wheels described by the prophet Ezekiel, we will encounter narratives that are so strikingly similar, yet separated by oceans and millennia, that they challenge everything we think we know about the isolated development of human cultures. This is not just a tour of interesting myths. This is an investigation into the possibility that human history is far richer, far stranger, and far more interconnected with the cosmos than our textbooks have ever dared to suggest. We are going to examine the evidence, listen to the stories with fresh ears, and ask the difficult questions. Could it be that these legends of gods, angels, and starfarers are not fantasy, but a glimpse into a forgotten chapter of our world? As we piece together this global puzzle, prepare to have your perception of the past completely rewritten. The journey into the mystery of the 30 ancient legends of celestial beings starts right now. Our journey begins over 6,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the very cradle of civilization known as Mesopotamia. It is here, in the dust of the world's first great cities like and Eridu, that archaeologists uncovered clay tablets inscribed with a script called cuneiform. And on these ancient tablets we find our first and perhaps most influential legend, the story of the Anunnaki, a name that translates with profound implication to those who from heaven to earth came. These were not vague nature spirits or distant celestial forces. The Sumerians and later Akkadians described the Anunnaki as physical beings who descended to our planet, possessing technology and knowledge that seemed nothing short of divine. At the heart of this sprawling narrative are two powerful brothers, Enki and Enlil, who embody a fascinating duality. Enlil is often portrayed as a stern, authoritative figure, a ruler concerned with order and law. His brother Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creation, emerges as a more compassionate and ingenious character, a master engineer and a friend to humanity. Their stories are detailed in epic texts like the Atrahasis, which reads less like a myth and more like a historical or even scientific document. This epic describes a time when the Anunnaki first arrived on Earth, which they called Kai, to mine for precious resources, specifically gold. The work, we are told, was grueling, and the Anunnaki laborers eventually rebelled against their superiors. Faced with a crisis, the Council of Gods, led by Enki and Enlil, devised a revolutionary solution. They decided to create a new being, a primitive worker, to take over the labor. What happens next is a sequence of events that has sparked immense controversy and fascination in the modern era. According to the text, Enki, with the help of the birth goddess Ninhursag, took the essence of a pre-existing primitive being referred to in some translations as a clay or an already existing creature, and mixed it with the blood and genetic material of a young Anunnaki god. This act of genetic engineering, this fusion of the celestial with the terrestrial, is said to have created the first humans, Homo sapiens. We were, in this interpretation, literally fashioned in the image of our creators, gifted with a portion of their intelligence but destined for servitude. This narrative offers a startlingly specific alternative to both theological creation stories and the scientific theory of evolution, suggesting an intelligent design event that jump-started human consciousness. The implications of this ancient account are staggering. It presents a scenario where humanity's sudden leap in cognitive ability, what scientists call the Great Leap Forward, could be attributed to external intervention. The Anunnaki, according to these texts, didn't just create us, they taught us. They imparted the foundations of agriculture, mathematics, astronomy, law, and social structure, all the hallmarks of civilization that seem to appear in Sumer fully formed, as if bestowed from a higher source. When you examine the sophistication of Sumerian astronomy, their precise knowledge of the solar system, including planets like Neptune and Uranus that wouldn't be officially discovered for another 4,000 years, it forces a profound question. Were these simply incredible guesses, or were they pieces of knowledge passed down by visitors who viewed our solar system from the outside? The legend of the Anunnaki doesn't just reside in the realm of fantasy. It poses a direct and compelling challenge to our understanding of human origins, suggesting that our oldest stories might be the key to our greatest mystery. But if the legends of Mesopotamia suggest a genetic intervention in our past, the ancient texts of India present us with something even more tangible and technologically astounding. As we move eastward from the deserts of the Middle East to the lush subcontinent, we encounter a civilization that wrote not just of gods who came from the sky, but of the magnificent vessels they used to travel through it. These are the Vimanas, and their descriptions are so precise and so mechanically sophisticated that they have fueled a debate that rages to this very day. Are these the poetic imaginations of a spiritual people, or could they be the remnants of a lost global age of advanced technology? The primary sources for these accounts are monumental works of literature that form the bedrock of Indian culture, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. These are not obscure, fragmented texts, but sprawling epics that have been recited and revered for thousands of years. Within their verses, Vimanas are described not as vague, ethereal clouds or fiery chariots, but as structured, piloted vehicles. They are called flying chariots or even flying palaces, and they are said to belong to both gods and legendary human heroes. The level of detail is what truly captures the modern imagination. For instance, the Mahabharata describes a Vimana owned by the hero Salva as being constructed of iron, saucer-shaped, and capable of incredible speeds and maneuvers, including hovering motionless in the sky. It's described as a vehicle that could travel to distant worlds and was impossible to slay. Perhaps the most controversial and specific text, however, is a later work known as the Vaimanika Shastra, or the Science of Aeronautics. Purportedly channeled in the early 20th century but claiming to be based on ancient knowledge, this document reads less like a myth and more like an engineering manual. It classifies various types of Vimanas, giving them names like the Rukma Vimana and the Sundara Vimana, and describes their construction in astonishing detail. It speaks of them being made from specific heat-absorbing metals, powered by engines that utilized mercury vortex systems, and equipped with cameras and mirrors for surveillance. It even describes them as having defensive capabilities, being able to render themselves invisible or create terrifying optical illusions to confuse enemies. This aligns with the weaponry described in the older epics such as the Brahmastra, a weapon said to release a projectile charged with all the power of the universe, and description that many find eerily reminiscent of a modern nuclear explosion. This is where the scholarly divide becomes a chasm. Mainstream historians and archaeologists largely view these descriptions as symbolic mythology. They argue that the Vimanas are powerful metaphors for spiritual attainment, divine power, or the soaring imagination of poets. The specific details they suggest are later additions or interpretations, an attempt to rationalize the supernatural within a more mechanical worldview. The Vaimanika Shastra, in particular, is often dismissed as a 20th century creation without a genuine ancient lineage. Ancient astronaut theorists, however, point to the sheer consistency and technical nature of the descriptions as evidence of something more profound. They ask a simple but powerful question: why would an ancient culture with no knowledge of aerodynamics or propulsion systems invent such complex and internally consistent descriptions of flying machines? The parallels to modern aircraft, the saucer shape, the use of mercury, which is a key component in some advanced propulsion concepts, the ideas of stealth technology and energy weapons are, for them, too striking to be mere coincidence. They propose that the Vimanas represent a cultural memory of actual advanced aerospace technology witnessed by ancient peoples, technology so far beyond their understanding that it could only be interpreted as divine. The debate over the Vimanas is ultimately a debate about the nature of evidence itself. Is it more logical to believe that ancient cultures independently imagined technologies that bear an uncanny resemblance to our own? Or does the persistence of such specific accounts across millennia suggest we are looking at a faded yet real historical record? The Vimanas of India remain one of the most compelling and visually concrete pieces of this global puzzle, challenging us to re-evaluate the technological ceiling of the ancient world. Leaving behind the intricate mechanical descriptions of the Vimanas, our exploration now takes us to the sun-scorched sands of ancient Egypt, where the celestial was not merely observed but intimately woven into the very fabric of daily life and the afterlife. Here, the concept of a sky-borne vehicle takes on a grander, more cosmic scale. The Egyptians did not simply tell stories of gods who flew. They envisioned the most fundamental force in their universe, the sun itself, as a god traveling in a magnificent vessel. This is the legend of Ra and his solar bark, a narrative that seamlessly blends profound mythology with startlingly tangible archaeological evidence. Central to this belief were not one but two celestial ships. By day, the sun god Ra journeyed across the sky in a boat known as the Manjet, which translates to the boat of millions of years. This vessel brought light, warmth, and order to the world, a visible testament to the god's benevolence and the pharaoh's divine right to rule. As the sun set in the west, however, Ra's journey entered its most perilous phase. He transferred to the Mesektet, the night bark, which would carry him through the 12 hours of the underworld known as the Juwat. This nocturnal voyage was a constant battle against the serpent of chaos, Apep, who sought to devour the bark and plunge creation into eternal darkness. Each sunrise was therefore a victory, a reaffirmation that Ra and his crew had successfully navigated the treacherous waters of the night. This duality of the barks presents a sophisticated understanding of cosmic cycles, framing the sun's daily path not as a simple orbit, but as an epic, regenerative struggle between order and chaos, life and death. The power of this myth is that it was not confined to temple walls or papyrus scrolls. The ancient Egyptians made this celestial concept breathtakingly physical. Adjacent to the Great Pyramid of Giza, in meticulously carved pits, archaeologists discovered the Khufu ship, a fully intact massive vessel built of cedar wood over 140 feet long. This was not a model or a symbolic offering. It was a fully functional, seaworthy ship buried around 2,500 years before the Common Era. While often called a solar bark, its exact purpose is a subject of vibrant debate. Some scholars propose it was a funerary barge intended to carry the pharaoh's spirit alongside Ra in his eternal journey, a literal vehicle for celestial travel. Others suggest it may have been used for the pharaoh's final pilgrimage, or was even a vessel he used in his earthly life. Regardless of its specific funerary role, the existence of such a precise, real-world counterpart to the mythological bark blurs the line between symbol and reality. It demonstrates that the Egyptians were not just imagining a celestial journey, they were investing immense resources to physically participate in it, creating a tangible link between the earthly and the divine. This brings us to the critical interpretive question: were the solar barks of Ra purely symbolic, or could they represent something more literal? From a conventional Egyptological perspective, the barks are powerful metaphors. The manjet represents the visible sun, a symbol of life, sovereignty, and cosmic order. The Mesektet's journey through the Juwat is an allegory for the soul's journey after death, facing trials and challenges before achieving rebirth. In this view, the myth is a sophisticated philosophical framework designed to explain natural phenomena and provide comfort about the afterlife. However, when viewed through the lens of ancient astronaut theory, a different possibility emerges. Could the description of Ra's bark, a brightly lit disc-shaped object traversing the sky by day and vanishing into a mysterious, unseen realm by night, be an interpretation of an advanced spacecraft? Proponents of this idea point to the specific terminology. The bark was often described as being made of gold and precious metals, materials that could be seen as describing a metallic, reflective hull. The crew of gods who accompanied Ra, including Heka, who represented magic but could be reinterpreted as a form of advanced technology, were essential to the vessel's operation, fighting off the chaotic force of Apep, which might symbolize some form of technical failure or external threat. The very concept of a god needing a vehicle, a physical ship, to travel is distinct from the idea of an omnipotent deity who can simply will themselves anywhere. It implies a technology, a mechanism for traversal. The buried ships like the Khufu vessel, then, might not be merely symbolic replicas, but perhaps attempts by the Egyptians to reconstruct or honor a technology they had witnessed, a celestial ship that once sailed their skies. The legend of the solar bark of Ra ultimately stands as a magnificent bridge between the tangible and the transcendent. It shows a civilization that looked at the central star of our solar system and saw not just a ball of plasma, but a divine captain piloting a ship on a cosmic ocean. Whether interpreted as a profound spiritual allegory or a garbled memory of extraterrestrial visitation, the story's enduring power lies in its fusion of observable reality with a grander, more mysterious cosmology. It suggests that for the ancient Egyptians, the heavens were not a distant void, but a navigable realm, and the gods were not abstract concepts, but active pilots in celestial vessels, a concept that resonates with an uncanny familiarity in our own age of space exploration. As we journey westward from the timeless sands of Egypt, our investigation brings us to the sun-drenched peaks and fertile valleys of ancient Greece, a civilization whose mythology has become the bedrock of Western storytelling. Here, atop the shrouded summit of Mount Olympus, resided a pantheon of gods whose dramas, passions, and interventions in human affairs were legendary. But beyond the familiar tales of Zeus's thunderbolts and Hermes' swift deliveries, there lies a fascinating layer of specificity in how these beings moved and interacted with our world. When we examine these descriptions not as pure fantasy but as the reported experiences of an ancient people, the Greek myths transform into a compelling catalogue of advanced technology and aerial phenomena. Consider the very essence of divine power, Zeus's mastery over the lightning bolt. In myth, these are not random acts of nature but precision-guided instruments of his will. He doesn't merely summon a storm, he hurls a single, devastating bolt with unerring accuracy to punish a foe or enforce his judgment. This description moves beyond the worship of a natural force and into the realm of a directed energy weapon. Imagine an ancient witness observing a brilliant, concentrated beam of energy striking a specific target from the heavens. Without the vocabulary for lasers or plasma weaponry, the closest analogy would be the most powerful and fearsome natural phenomenon they knew, a lightning strike, but one commanded by a conscious intelligence. The portrayal of these bolts as physical artifacts forged by the Cyclopes in the heart of a volcanic workshop further suggests a technological device, a piece of advanced hardware, rather than an abstract magical power. This technological interpretation becomes even more pronounced with the messenger god, Hermes. He is depicted not as a blur of speed, but as equipped with very specific gear, the iconic winged sandals, a winged helmet, and a herald's staff. This is a complete outfit designed for a specific function: rapid, personal flight. The emphasis on the equipment is crucial. It implies that the ability to fly was not an innate power of the god himself, but was dependent on technology that he wore. The winged sandals, the talaria, could be seen as an ancient description of personal anti-gravity devices or sophisticated propulsion units attached to the feet. His helmet perhaps served as a protective or navigational aid. Hermes is the quintessential pilot, a specialist whose role was to traverse vast distances between the divine realm of Olympus, the mortal world, and even the underworld with impossible speed. His characterization fits perfectly with the concept of an astronaut or a shuttle pilot, a being tasked with transportation and communication between different domains or bases. The most dramatic manifestations of this idea are the gods' grand arrivals and departures. The epic poets frequently describe the gods descending from Olympus in chariots of fire, radiating such intense light and majesty that no mortal could look upon them directly. These are not the horse-drawn war chariots used on Earth, but celestial vehicles that blaze across the sky. The goddess Aphrodite, for example, is often described as riding a chariot drawn by doves, a seemingly poetic image that could also be interpreted as a description of a vessel with a distinctive, perhaps quieter or more graceful propulsion system compared to the thunderous arrival of Zeus. These accounts consistently highlight the sensory impact of these events: the deafening noise, the blinding light, the heat, and the overwhelming awe felt by witnesses. These are not the hallmarks of a gentle spiritual visitation, but the reported side effects of a powerful, technologically advanced craft landing or taking off. This techno-mythological lens allows us to view the entire structure of Greek mythology in a new light. The gods are not omnipotent, ethereal spirits. They are physical beings with personalities, conflicts, and limitations. They get wounded in battle, they require nectar and ambrosia to maintain their vitality, and they rely on their chariots and equipment to perform their feats. Their home, Mount Olympus, is not a mystical paradise in another dimension, but a specific, though inaccessible, geographical location. This portrayal is strikingly consistent with the idea of an advanced group of beings, perhaps extraterrestrial or from a lost terrestrial civilization, who established a base of operations on a mountain peak and interacted with developing humanity. Their interventions in human wars, their romantic entanglements with mortals, and their gift of knowledge and skills like metallurgy and agriculture echo the very same themes we encountered with the Anunnaki of Sumer. The Greek myths, therefore, are not an isolated cultural product, but a powerful Mediterranean variation on a global theme: the memory of celestial beings who walked among us, possessing technology so advanced it defined the very concept of divinity. From the ordered cosmos of the Greeks, we now venture north into a world shaped by ice and fire, where mythology reflects a harsher, more elemental reality. The legends of the Norse peoples, chronicled in the poetic and prose Eddas, introduce us to two clans of deities, the warlike Aesir and the nature-oriented Vanya. While their stories are filled with epic battles and fateful prophecies, It is their methods of traversing the vast distances between the 9 worlds of their cosmology that capture our attention. Their means of travel are not vague magical teleportation, but are described with a distinct and tangible physicality that begs for a deeper interpretation. Consider the possessions of the Allfather himself, Odin. His most famed steed is Sleipnir, a horse unlike any other, described as grey in color and most remarkably having 8 legs. In a purely symbolic reading, Sleipnir represents the power of a shaman's spirit journey, his 8 legs allowing him to travel with unmatched speed not just across land, but between the realms of the living and the dead. Yet when we suspend our preconceptions, the image of an 8-legged creature becomes something far more curious. Could this description be an attempt to articulate a vehicle that moved not by galloping, but by employing multiple articulated legs or perhaps even powerful piston-like landing gear? The notion of a horse might simply have been the closest analog the Vikings had for a fast-moving, ridden conveyance. Sleipnir's ability to carry Odin through the air and down into the underworld suggests a craft capable of both atmospheric flight and perhaps even dimensional or subterranean travel, a versatile all-terrain vehicle for a god-king. This theme of specialized travel equipment continues with the goddess Freyja of the Vanir. She is the owner of a magnificent cloak made of falcon feathers. When she dons this cloak, she does not merely disguise herself, she transforms, gaining the ability to fly swiftly between the worlds. This is not a metaphor for meditation, but a described physical transformation enabled by a specific piece of gear. The falcon cloak functions with the precision of a sophisticated flight suit or even a personal aircraft shaped like a bird of prey. The specificity is compelling. It implies that the ability to travel the cosmos was not an innate power of these beings, but was dependent on technology that could be worn, owned, and even lent to others, as the myths tell us Freyja often did. But the most spectacular feat of Norse cosmic engineering is undoubtedly the Bifrost. This is no mere rainbow. The Eddas describe it as a burning, 3-colored bridge, a vibrant arc of fire and light that connects the realm of the gods, Asgard, to the world of humanity, Midgard. It is guarded by the god Heimdall, who possesses such acute senses he can hear the grass growing on earth and see for hundreds of miles. His role is that of a sentry, a vigilant watchman stationed at the Asgard end of this bridge. The description of the Bifrost is particularly revealing. It is said to be ablaze, to be incredibly sturdy, yet it will shatter with a thunderous roar at the time of Ragnarok, the end of the world. This imagery of a luminous, structured pathway that can be destroyed under immense stress moves far beyond a simple weather phenomenon. To the ancient astronaut theorist, the Bifrost bears a startling resemblance to concepts in theoretical physics. It could be interpreted as a stable wormhole, an Einstein-Rosen bridge, creating a shortcut through spacetime between 2 points. The burning, radiant appearance might describe the intense energy discharge and light-bending effects theorized to surround such a portal. Heimdall, then, transforms from a mythical watchman into the operator of a cosmic gateway, monitoring its stability and controlling access. The idea that this bridge would break under the strain of an apocalyptic event parallels scientific speculation about the collapse of a wormhole under extreme energy conditions. The Norse didn't just imagine a rainbow, they described a dynamic, powerful, and potentially fragile transportation system, a structured conduit for celestial travel that functionally served the same purpose as the Vimanas or the solar bark, but through a different technological principle. A fixed, point-to-point portal rather than a mobile vessel. The Norse myths, therefore, present a coherent and technologically suggestive package. We have personal flight equipment in the Falcon Cloak, a versatile aerial vehicle in Sleipnir, and an interstellar or interdimensional gateway in the Bifrost, all protected by a specialized gatekeeper. This triad of travel methods suggests a people witnessing or remembering a sophisticated logistical network operated by advanced beings. The Aesir and Vanir were not distant, omnipotent spirits. They were physical beings who lived in a specific place, Asgard, and used advanced technology to project their power and interact with humanity. In the frozen landscapes of Scandinavia, the myths preserved not just tales of gods and giants, but a profound memory of a connection to the stars, a burning bridge of light that once linked heaven and earth. But perhaps no ancient legend presents a more direct and perplexing challenge to mainstream history than one that emerges not from a grand, literate civilization, but from the remote Bandiagara escarpment of Mali in West Africa. Here, the Dogon people have preserved a cosmological tradition that, when it was first documented by Western anthropologists in the 1930s, sent shockwaves through the scientific community. At the heart of their beliefs is the Sirius star system, and their knowledge of its most intimate secrets is nothing short of miraculous. Knowledge, they say, was given to them by visitors from the stars themselves, the Nommo. The Dogon described the Nommo as amphibious, fish-like beings who arrived in a great ark that spun on its axis and was accompanied by fire and thunder as it descended from the sky. They are revered as the masters of the water, the civilizing gods who brought them the fundamentals of agriculture, social structure, and most significantly, a profound understanding of the cosmos. What makes this legend so explosive is the specific astronomical date that the Dogon possessed long before modern telescopes could confirm it. For centuries, Western astronomy saw Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, as a single star. The Dogon, however, knew it as a binary system. They spoke of a tiny, incredibly dense and invisible companion star they called Po Tolo, Po meaning a small seed grain and Tolo meaning star. This star, they said, orbits Sirius in an elliptical path over a period of 50 years and is made of a metal heavier than anything on Earth, a substance they called Sagala. When French anthropologists Marcel Grioul and Germain Dieterlen studied the Dogon in depth in the 1940s and 50s, they were astounded by the precision of this knowledge. The existence of Sirius B, a white dwarf star, had only been inferred by astronomers in the mid-19th century and wasn't directly photographed until 1970. A white dwarf is exactly what the Dogon described, a star of immense density where a single teaspoon of its matter would indeed weigh many tons, matching their concept of the heavy metal Sagala. Its orbital period around Sirius is almost precisely 50.1 years. The Dogon also knew that Sirius B orbits on an elliptical path, a detail that aligns perfectly with Kepler's laws of planetary motion, and they even had a third star in the system, Mya, which, while not yet confirmed, some astronomers have speculated could be a potential Sirius C. The question is unavoidable. How could a people with no astronomical instruments have such accurate knowledge of a star system that is nearly 9 light-years away, knowledge that requires advanced physics and optics to verify? The debate that has raged ever since is a classic collision between two worldviews. On one side, mainstream skeptics and astronomers, most notably the late Carl Sagan, proposed a theory of cultural contamination. They argue that the Dogon likely encountered Western astronomers or missionaries in the early 20th century who could have passed on this exciting new astronomical discovery. By the time Grioul and Dieterlen arrived, the information had already been incorporated into the existing Dogon mythology. Sagan pointed out that if extraterrestrials had indeed visited, they would have given the Dogon much more useful and less arbitrary information, like the existence of other planets in our own solar system. From this perspective, the Dogon legend is a fascinating example of how new scientific ideas can be absorbed and reframed within an ancient cultural framework, not evidence of ancient contact. However, proponents of the ancient astronaut theory find the contamination hypothesis deeply flawed. They point out that Grioul and Dieterlen's Dogon informants were elders who provided detailed drawings and information that was deeply embedded in their creation myths and ritual calendars, suggesting this was not a recent addition but a long-standing tradition. They ask why, if the information came from Westerners, the Dogon would have integrated it so seamlessly into a pre-existing narrative about amphibious gods. Furthermore, the description of the Nomo's arrival in a spinning, fiery arc is a vivid account of a spacecraft landing, complete with the sonic booms and rotational stabilization we associate with rocketry. The fish-like appearance of the Nomo could be interpreted as a description of a pressure suit or a biological adaptation to an aquatic world, suggesting an extraterrestrial origin from a water-rich planet. For these researchers, the Dogon tradition is one of the purest and most well-documented cases of preserved ancient knowledge, a star map handed down from generation to generation as a sacred trust from their celestial teachers. The mystery of the Dogon and the Nomo remains unresolved, a captivating puzzle at the intersection of anthropology, astronomy, and the search for our past. It forces us to confront the limitations of our own historical models and to consider the profound possibility that isolated cultures around the world might be guarding fragments of a truth far grander than we have yet imagined. Crossing from the harsh, elemental worlds of Norse myth, we arrive in a civilization where the celestial and the earthly were intricately woven into a philosophy of cosmic harmony. In ancient China, the dragon was not a monster to be slain, but a revered celestial being, a symbol of immense power, wisdom, and the divine right to rule. Unlike the fire-breathing beasts of Western lore, the Chinese dragon, or Long, was a creature of the air and water, a benevolent force that controlled the rains, rivers, and seas. Its very form is a composite of 9 different animals, symbolizing its all-encompassing nature: the horns of a deer, the head of a camel, the eyes of a demon, the neck of a snake, the belly of a clam, the scales of a carp, the claws of an eagle, the paws of a tiger, and the ears of an ox. This was not a creature that could have evolved naturally, but rather it appears to be a deliberate construct, a symbolic representation of a being that unified the supreme attributes of the entire animal kingdom. The dragon's primary domain was the sky. It was said to fly through the heavens without wings, riding the clouds and summoning the life-giving rains that nourished the crops of the Middle Kingdom. This ability to control weather patterns made the dragon the ultimate arbiter of fortune and famine, but its significance went far beyond agriculture. The Emperor of China was known as the Son of Heaven, and the dragon was his exclusive symbol. He sat on the dragon throne, slept in the dragon bed, and wore robes embroidered with dragon motifs. This was not merely a symbol of power, it was a direct claim of celestial lineage. The belief was that the emperor ruled by the mandate of heaven, a divine authority granted by the cosmic forces the dragon represented. In this context, the dragon can be seen as more than a mythological creature. It becomes a plausible representation of an advanced, non-human intelligence that once interacted with the earliest Chinese rulers. The dragon's flight through the clouds, its control over elemental forces, and its role as a conduit between heaven and earth bear a striking resemblance to the descriptions of aerial vehicles or powerful beings from other cultures. Could the dragon be China's unique interpretation of a celestial visitor, a being whose advanced technology allowed it to manipulate the atmosphere, an ability that would have seemed nothing less than godlike to an ancient agrarian society? The consistent depiction of the emperor as the dragon's earthly representative strongly suggests a forgotten history of contact, where knowledge and authority were bestowed from a higher celestial source. This theme of direct celestial interaction finds an even more personal and technologically suggestive expression in one of China's most beloved myths, the story of Howie and Chang. The tale begins in a time of cosmic crisis. 10 sons, the children of the Jade Emperor, decided to rise together in the sky, threatening to scorch the earth and eradicate all life. In this hour of desperation, the legendary archer Howie was called upon. With his divine bow, he shot down 9 of the 10 sons, saving humanity from utter destruction. This feat alone is extraordinary, The imagery of a single archer targeting and destroying 9 celestial bodies is less like a simple hero story and more like an account of planetary defense. From an ancient astronaut perspective, the 10 suns could be interpreted as a fleet of luminous, perhaps overheating or malfunctioning, spacecraft whose presence was causing catastrophic climate change on Earth. Howe, then, would not be a mere archer, but a skilled operator of a sophisticated ground-to-air weapon system, using targeted energy projectiles to neutralize the 9 threatening vessels and restore ecological balance. Howe's reward for this service was an elixir of immortality from the Queen Mother of the West. This was not a simple potion, but a single dose that would grant eternal life to one person. Howe, however, did not consume it immediately, choosing instead to share his mortal life with his beloved wife, the beautiful Chang. The critical turn in the story comes when a jealous intruder attempts to steal the elixir. To prevent this, Chang is forced to drink it herself. Upon consuming the substance, she does not simply become immortal on the spot. She begins to float, levitating off the ground, and then ascends, drifting higher and higher until she reaches the moon, where she is fated to live alone forever. This sequence of events is profoundly significant. The elixir does not cause a spiritual transformation. It induces a physical reaction, anti-gravity. Chang's ascent is a literal, observable launch into space, culminating in a journey to a specific celestial body. This reads less like magic and more like the accidental activation of a highly advanced technological substance or device. The elixir of immortality could be understood as a powerful biochemical or energy-based technology that restructures biology and allows for gravitational defiance, a technology so advanced that its effects were indistinguishable from divinity. Chang's destination, the moon, adds another layer of intrigue. In the myth, she does not find a barren rock but a palace where she becomes the moon goddess. This echoes the curious consistency across ancient cultures that viewed the moon not as a dead satellite but as an inhabited world. The Chinese legend provides a specific narrative for how a being from Earth came to reside there. The enduring celebration of the Mid-Autumn Festival, with its mooncakes and lanterns, is a millennia-old tradition centered on honoring Chang. This is not just a folk tale, it is a cultural memory embedded in an annual ritual, a collective remembrance of a time when a humanoid figure, empowered by celestial technology, traveled from our world to another. Together, the legends of the celestial dragons and the spacefaring Chang present a cohesive picture of an ancient China deeply connected to a cosmic order, a civilization that preserved the memory of advanced beings, aerial phenomena, and even interplanetary travel within the beautiful and enduring tapestry of its mythology. Venturing now to the vast, ancient continent of Australia, we encounter a tradition so visually distinct and spiritually profound that it stands apart from all others. In the rugged Kimberley region of northwestern Australia, adorning the walls of rock shelters for thousands of years, are the enigmatic paintings of the Wandjina. These are not the stick figure human forms common to other rock art. The Wandjina are striking, powerful figures with large, black, oval-shaped eyes that seem to peer out from the rock face, often lacking a detailed mouth. Their most defining feature is a halo or helmet-like band encircling their heads, from which radiant lines sometimes emanate, suggesting a powerful energy or connection to the stormy sky. For the Aboriginal peoples of this land, the Wandjina are not mere artistic representations. They are the sacred cloud and rain spirits, the supreme creators who shaped the landscape, filled the waterholes, and gave life to the first human beings. According to the creation stories passed down through uncounted generations, the Wandjina descended from the Milky Way during the Dreamtime, the sacred era of world shaping. They traveled across the barren land, creating rivers, mountains, and all living things through their immense power. After their work of creation was complete, the Wandjina did not simply vanish. They painted their own images upon the cave walls as a record of their presence, and then entered a state of repose within the earth itself. their spiritual essence merging with the very water sources they created. This is why the Wandjina are intrinsically linked to the monsoon rains. Their ongoing spiritual presence is believed to directly control the fertility of the land and the vital seasonal cycles. To ensure this life-giving power continues, the images must be regularly repainted and revitalized in elaborate ceremonies conducted by the rightful custodians. This practice is not about creating new art, but about renewing a sacred contract with the creators, a ritual that maintains the balance of the world. Yet, there is a deeply intriguing and specific prohibition central to this tradition. When repainting the Wandjina figures, the Aboriginal artists are forbidden from painting a mouth. Oral traditions explain that the Wandjina are so powerful that if they were given mouths, the rains would never cease, leading to catastrophic floods. This unique taboo forces us to ask a critical question: why would the addition of a simple mouth be associated with such overwhelming, uncontrollable power? From a conventional anthropological view, this is a powerful metaphor for the delicate balance of nature and the responsibility of humans to act as stewards, not to arrogantly assume the full power of the creators. However, another interpretation presents itself when viewed through a different lens. The description of beings with large, dark, penetrating eyes, a missing or indistinct mouth, and a helmet-like headdress is strikingly reminiscent of modern depictions of astronauts in pressurized suits. Could the prohibition against painting a mouth be a cultural memory of the fact that these beings did not speak as humans do, perhaps because they communicated in another way or because their suits enclosed their faces? The halo or helmet could be interpreted as a protective headgear, and the radiating lines might represent the glow of a visor or an energy field. The Wandjina's direct association with control over the atmosphere bringing rain and storms parallels the idea of a technology capable of weather modification. In this light, the Wandjina are not supernatural spirits in the abstract sense, but could be remembered as physical beings who arrived in craft, possessed advanced technology that allowed them to terraform the Australian landscape, and were perceived as gods by the indigenous people who witnessed their activities. Their subsequent retreat into the earth could symbolize the departure of these beings, leaving behind their painted images as a testament to their visit and the promise that their influence, like the seasonal rains, would return. The Wandjina of Australia thus offer one of the most visually compelling and culturally resonant pieces of this global puzzle, a tradition that has preserved the memory of the celestial creators with unwavering fidelity for millennia. While the ancient civilizations of the continents built monuments and recorded their encounters on clay and stone, an entirely different kind of celestial relationship was being forged out on the open ocean across the greatest expanse of water on Earth. The Polynesian voyagers who settled the remote islands of the Pacific in a migration spanning thousands of years did not just worship sky gods from a distance. They entered into a living, breathing partnership with the heavens. Their legend is not one of visitors descending in fiery craft, but of a people who learned to navigate the celestial sea itself, guided by the wisdom of the Sky Father. Across many Polynesian cultures, the supreme creator is Tangaroa, or Kane in Hawaii, the god of the ocean, fertility, and the heavens. But unlike the distant, often temperamental gods of other pantheons, Tangaroa was an immanent presence. The ocean was his domain, and the stars were his children, his guiding lights. This worldview created a seamless connection between the divine, the natural world, and humanity. The Polynesians saw the cosmos as a vast chart, with each star and constellation not as a distant ball of gas, but as an ancestor, a deity, or a sacred animal. To sail was to journey across the body of the god, following the paths laid out by his celestial family. This was a celestial guidance system of the most profound kind, where myth and practical survival were inextricably linked. The practical application of this belief system resulted in what is arguably one of the greatest feats of human exploration in history: using double-hulled canoes or wah that were masterpieces of maritime engineering. Polynesian navigators undertook voyages of staggering distance and precision. They crossed thousands of miles of trackless ocean, finding specks of land so small that modern sailors with GPS still marvel at the achievement. Their method was a complex and holistic science passed down through generations. They were master wayfinders, and their tools were the stars, the waves, the winds, and the wildlife. They memorized the precise rising and setting points of hundreds of stars, knowing that each one was a fixed beacon in the night sky. The North Star, Hokupa in Hawaiian meaning fixed star, was their anchor, while the Southern Cross and others served as guides to different latitudes. But their knowledge went far beyond simple star paths. They understood the concept of a star compass, where the horizon was divided into 32 houses, each associated with a specific star that would rise or set there. They read the ocean itself like a book, interpreting the subtle patterns of swells that reflected off distant islands, sensing changes in currents, and observing the flight paths of birds that would lead them to land. They could detect the presence of an atoll over the horizon by the way the clouds gathered and glowed with a greenish tint from the reflected lagoon below. This was not guesswork. It was an empirical, deeply nuanced science encoded within their oral traditions and chants. The legend of the Sky Father was the spiritual framework that gave meaning and sacred purpose to this incredible repository of knowledge. Each successful voyage was a testament to their harmony with Tangaroa and the celestial beings lighting the way. When we place this accomplishment in its proper context, the question of its origin becomes unavoidable. How did this specific, highly advanced system of open ocean navigation develop in isolation? The mainstream historical view suggests a gradual process of exploration, island hopping over centuries, with each new generation venturing a little further. Yet, the distances involved and the pinpoint accuracy required to find and settle islands like Rapa Nui, Easter Island, or Hawaii challenge this gradualist model. The ancient astronaut theory offers a provocative alternative. Could the Polynesian system of wayfinding be a preserved legacy, a science taught to them by the very celestial beings they revered? Proponents point to the oral chants that speak of the amateur, the ancient ones or original teachers, who possessed great knowledge. In this interpretation, Tangaroa and other deities might not be abstract gods but representations of advanced beings who, in a forgotten age, traveled the Pacific and imparted their understanding of celestial mechanics and oceanography to the Polynesian ancestors. The star knowledge, so precise and comprehensive, could be seen as a gift from beings who themselves navigated by the stars on an interstellar scale. The concept of the stars as ancestors takes on a new, literal meaning. This perspective does not diminish the incredible skill and courage of the Polynesian voyagers. Rather, it suggests that their legendary journey across the Pacific might have been guided by a much older cosmic memory, a celestial roadmap inherited from the starfarers themselves. The Polynesian legend, therefore, stands as a powerful testament to a different kind of contact, not of dramatic landings and wars, but of a peaceful transfer of knowledge that enabled humanity to conquer its own world, guided by the silent, steady light of the sky. Shifting our focus from the vast Pacific to the dense jungles of Central America, we encounter a legend so powerful that its influence bridged empires and whose physical manifestation still captivates millions to this day. This is the story of Kukulkan, known to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl, the plumed or feathered serpent. More than just a deity, Kukulkan was a celestial teacher, a civilizing god who descended from the heavens to bestow upon humanity the very pillars of civilization. The narrative describes him as a bearded, fair-skinned figure who arrived from across the eastern sea, promising to return one day. His gifts were not abstract blessings but concrete, transformative knowledge, the foundation of agriculture, specifically the cultivation of maize, which became the staple of Mesoamerican life, the complex and accurate calendar systems that governed planting, harvest, and sacred ceremonies, and the principles of mathematics, including the revolutionary concept of zero, which allowed for advanced astronomical calculations. What makes the legend of Kukulkan truly extraordinary, however, is that the ancient Maya engineered a breathtakingly precise monument to this event, a piece of architectural genius that turns myth into a visible annual spectacle. At the great city of Chichen Itza, the pyramid known as El Castillo was constructed as a physical testament to Mayan cosmological knowledge. This massive step pyramid is not merely a temple, it is a colossal calendar carved in stone. Its four sides each have 91 steps, which, when added to the single shared platform at the top, totals 365, one for each day of the solar year. The pyramid is oriented with such incredible accuracy that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, a phenomenon occurs that must be seen to be believed. As the sun sets on these 2 days, the play of light and shadow against the northwestern corner of the pyramid creates a series of 7 interlocking triangles of light. These triangles run down the balustrade, forming the unmistakable, undulating body of a massive serpent, which appears to slither down from the sky to meet the stone serpent head carved at the base of the staircase. This is not a vague resemblance or a happy accident. It is the result of meticulous architectural planning that integrated astronomy, geometry, and mythology into a single, unified experience. For the ancient Maya, this was not a symbolic representation. It was the annual return of Kukulkan himself, descending from the cosmos to reconnect with his people and bless the land. The event draws thousands of witnesses every year, a testament to its enduring power. From a conventional archaeological standpoint, this phenomenon is a masterpiece of archaeoastronomy, demonstrating the Mayas' profound understanding of the sun's cycles and their desire to manifest their beliefs in the physical world in the most dramatic way possible. Yet, when we apply the ancient astronaut lens, the story of Kukulkan takes on another layer of profound implication. Could the legend be a cultural memory of an actual event? The description of a bearded, knowledge-bearing figure from the sky who arrives with advanced understanding mirrors the archetype we've seen across the globe. The specific knowledge he imparted, agriculture, mathematics, calendars, is precisely the kind of information that would catalyze the development of a primitive society into a sophisticated civilization. The dramatic equinox shadow at Chichen Itza, then, might be more than just a clever trick of the light. It could be interpreted as a deliberate, long-term memorialization of a spacecraft's descent. The serpentine shape slithering down the pyramid could be a stylized representation of a descending craft, perhaps one with a segmented, glowing hull or a trail of energy, an event so impactful that the Maya built a permanent, interactive monument to ensure it would never be forgotten. The promise of Kukulkan's return echoes a hope or a prophecy that these celestial teachers would one day come back, a theme that resonates deeply with our own modern fascination with extraterrestrial contact. Whether viewed as a divine manifestation or a historical encounter, the legend of the feathered serpent and its stunning architectural proof at Chichen Itza stands as one of the most compelling and visually dramatic accounts of a celestial being's direct intervention in human history. From the intricate astronomical clockwork of the Maya, we now travel to the heart of the Aztec Empire, where the very existence of the universe was believed to hang in a fragile, bloody balance. The Aztec worldview was not one of a stable, permanent creation, but of a cosmos locked in a perpetual cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, a drama directed by powerful and often warring celestial beings. At the core of this belief was the astonishing legend of the Five Suns, a narrative that explains how our present world is merely the fifth in a series of creations, each presided over by a different sun, and each ultimately destroyed by a cataclysmic event. According to the myth recorded in texts like the Codex Chimalpopoca, we are currently living in the era of the fifth sun, known as Nahui Olan, or the sun of movement. But to understand the precariousness of our own age, we must look back at the four worlds that came before it. The first sun, Nahui Oslotl 4 Jaguar, was a world of giants destroyed when the celestial being Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, lost his position as the sun to his rival Quetzalcoatl, and jaguars devoured the giant. The second sun, Nahui Ehecatl 4 Wind, was ruled by Quetzalcoatl himself, but ended when Tezcatlipoca, in an act of vengeance, knocked him from the sky, unleashing hurricanes that swept away humanity, who were transformed into monkeys. The third sun, Nahui Quiahuatl 4 Rain, was governed by the rain god Tlaloc until Quetzalcoatl rained fire upon it, ending that age in a torrent of volcanic fire and lava. The fourth sun, Nahui Atl 4 Water, was presided over by Tlaloc's consort Chalchutlacu, the goddess of water, who wept tears of blood for 52 years, flooding the world and turning humanity into fish. Each of these cosmic cycles was not a random accident of nature, but the direct result of a divine struggle between two of the most powerful figures in the Aztec pantheon, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent of wisdom and life, and Tezcatlipoca, his dark twin, the god of night, sorcery, and destiny. They were brothers, but also eternal adversaries, their conflict driving the engine of cosmic time. Their battles for supremacy were not merely symbolic. They were described as physical, earth-shattering events where one would literally knock the other from his celestial throne, plunging the world into chaos. This narrative presents a universe where creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin, orchestrated by immensely powerful entities whose personal conflicts have direct, catastrophic consequences for all of humanity. The creation of our own world, the fifth sun, is a story of supreme sacrifice that reveals the high stakes of this cosmic order. The myth tells us that after the destruction of the fourth sun, the world was in darkness. The gods gathered at the ancient city of Teotihuacan and decided that a new sun must be created, but it required a god to leap into a great ceremonial fire and transform into the new celestial body. Two gods stepped forward, the proud and wealthy Tecusistecatl and the humble, diseased Nanahuatzin. When the time came, the arrogant Tecusistecatl hesitated 4 times before the flames, frozen by fear. But Nanahuatzin, without a moment's pause, courageously jumped into the pyre and was consumed. Shamed by this act of courage, Tecusistecatl then leaped in after him. As the gods watched, 2 suns rose in the sky, the brilliant Nanahuatzin and the dimmer Tecusistecatl. But a world with 2 suns was unacceptable. So one of the gods took a rabbit and threw it into the face of Tecusistecatl, dimming his light, and he became the moon, the marks of the rabbit still visible on its surface. Yet the newborn sun, Nanahuatzin, remained motionless in the sky. He demanded a price for his movement, for his life-giving energy. The other gods realized that only a sacrifice of their own blood, their own sacred energy, would set the sun in motion. And so, in an act of collective sacrifice, the gods offered their own hearts, their own lives, to fuel the sun on its journey. This established the fundamental principle of the fifth sun. The sun requires constant nourishment, a constant offering of the most precious substance, life force itself, to continue its movement across the sky and prevent the universe from collapsing back into eternal darkness. This is where the Aztec legend moves from cosmic mythology to a terrifying and direct explanation of their most well-known practice, human sacrifice. For the Aztecs, the sacrifices performed on the tops of their pyramids were not acts of mere cruelty or superstition. They were a vital, cosmological necessity, a sacred duty to replay the original sacrifice of the gods. By offering human hearts, the Teolia, or divine spark, to the sun, they were literally feeding the celestial engine that kept their world from ending. The blood was seen as chalchihuol, or sacred water, the same life-giving substance that nourished the sun and the earth. In their view, they were not killing people. They were returning divine energy to its source, sustaining the cosmic cycle, and postponing the inevitable cataclysm that had befallen the 4 previous suns. The legend predicted that our world, the sun of movement, would ultimately be destroyed by massive earthquakes, a fitting end for an age defined by instability. This belief system created a society living under a sword of Damocles, where the daily rising of the sun was not taken for granted, but was seen as a victory earned through constant, ritualized bloodshed. From the perspective of ancient astronaut theory, the legend of the five suns offers a staggering interpretation. Could these stories be a cultural memory of actual, planet-altering events caused by advanced beings? The destruction of each sun by jaguars, hurricanes, volcanic fire, and flood reads like a catalogue of global cataclysms. The concept of warring gods like Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca could be a retelling of a conflict between two factions of extraterrestrial or hyper-advanced visitors, using technologies so powerful they could inadvertently or deliberately reshape the planet and wipe out entire civilizations. The creation of the fifth sun through a god immolating himself in a fire could be interpreted as the launch of an artificial sun or a powerful energy source, a technological marvel that required immense power to activate power that could be metaphorically described as a sacrifice. The ongoing need for nourishment might then be seen as the requirement for a specific type of fuel or energy to maintain this technology, a requirement that the Aztecs, misunderstanding its nature, interpreted as the need for blood sacrifice. This theory suggests that the Aztecs were not merely sun worshippers, but the custodians of a terrifying and misunderstood legacy, a warning from the past about the destructive potential of the celestial beings who once walked the earth. Their entire civilization, with its soaring pyramids and solemn rituals, becomes a desperate attempt to maintain a pact with the sky, a pact written in the blood of worlds that had come before. While the Aztecs looked to the heavens with a sense of urgent sacrifice, the Hopi people of the American Southwest have maintained a relationship with the celestial that is deeply woven into the cycles of community life and the rhythms of the natural world. Central to their cosmology are the Kachinas, a concept often misunderstood by those outside their culture. These are not distant, omnipotent gods to be feared, but rather a vast community of powerful spirit beings who act as benevolent messengers and educators. The Hopi believe there are hundreds of these distinct Kachinas, each representing a specific aspect of the natural world, from rain and corn to animals and ancestors. They are the essential intermediaries, bridging the gap between the Hopi people and the great, more abstract creative forces of the universe. The presence of the Kachinas is made visible through one of the most vibrant and intricate ceremonial traditions on Earth. During specific times of the year, particularly from the winter solstice until shortly after the summer solstice, initiated Hopi men don elaborate, sacred masks and costumes to physically embody the Kachina spirits. These are not mere performances or simple dances. For the Hopi, this is a time of profound spiritual convergence. When a dancer puts on the mask, he is not pretending to be the Kachina. He becomes a vessel for its spirit, allowing the Kachina to descend from its home in the San Francisco peaks and other sacred mountains to live among the people for half the year. Through these ceremonies, the Kachinas bring prayers for rain and abundant harvests directly to the deities. They discipline children and they bestow gifts, reinforcing the social and spiritual order of the Hopi world. The dolls carved from cottonwood root and given to children are not toys in the conventional sense, but teaching tools, carefully crafted to help the young recognize and understand the different Kachinas and their roles, ensuring the continuity of this sacred knowledge. Where this tradition takes a fascinating turn is in the origin story of the Kachinas themselves. Hopi oral history is unequivocal. The Kachinas are not native to this earth. They are celestial visitors who came from the stars. The stories tell of a time long ago when the Hopi were living in a difficult world, and the Kachinas descended from the heavens to teach them how to survive and flourish. They imparted the knowledge of agriculture, showing them how to cultivate corn, beans, and squash in the arid desert soil. They taught the principles of law, community, and spirituality. After living with the Hopi for a period, the Kachinas eventually departed from the village of Orebai, but before they left, they gifted the people with the rituals, the masks, and the sacred knowledge of the ceremonies, promising that their spirits would return each year when the people called upon them through the proper rituals. This narrative of star-born teachers providing the essentials of civilization is a powerful echo of themes we have encountered across the globe, from the Anunnaki of Sumer to Kukulkan of the Maya. This connection to the stars culminates in one of the most poignant and urgent of all Hopi prophecies, the coming of the blue star Kachina. This is not a legend of the past, but a vision of the future that the Hopi say is unfolding now. The prophecy states that a time of great purification will come to the world, a period of upheaval that will cleanse the earth of imbalance and corruption. The sign marking the final stages of this purification will be the appearance of the blue star Kachina. This entity is described as a blue star that will appear in the sky, visible to all, and its arrival will signal that the time of the great purification is near. Shortly thereafter, a final, masked Kachina known as the Poho Kachina will reveal itself by removing its mask during a public ceremony. This act will signify the end of the Hopi ceremonial cycle as we know it, marking the return of the true Kachinas from the stars and the dawn of a new, purified world. The interpretation of this prophecy is multi-layered. Some see it as a spiritual allegory for an inner transformation humanity must undergo. Others, however, view it in a more literal, cosmological light. The appearance of a blue star could be interpreted as a celestial event, such as the arrival of a comet, a supernova, or even a large spacecraft approaching Earth. The act of the Poho Kachina unmasking is particularly striking, as it suggests the final revelation of a true identity, the moment when a being long perceived as a spiritual representation steps forward as a physical, extraterrestrial teacher. For the Hopi, these prophecies are a living guide, a warning about the consequences of living out of harmony with nature, and a promise of renewal for those who uphold the old ways. The Kachina tradition, therefore, is far more than a cultural artifact. It is a dynamic link to a starry origin and a roadmap for a potential future, reminding us that our relationship with the celestial is not just about the past, but about the choices we make in the present. High in the thin, breathtaking air of the Andes, where the sky feels close enough to touch, the Inca civilization built an empire that stretched along the spine of South America. Their worldview, like their magnificent stonework, was precise, ordered, and deeply connected to the heavens. At the very summit of their intricate cosmology stood Viracocha, a creator deity whose legend is so profound and whose departure is so specific that it invites a startling comparison to other global messengers from the stars. Viracocha's story begins not on a mountain peak, but in the deep, dark waters of Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake in the world. According to the Inca creation myth, in the time of primordial darkness, Viracocha emerged from the lake, bringing forth the very first light. He was described as a tall, bearded, fair-skinned man, a figure of immense wisdom and power who wore a long, white robe and carried a staff. This physical description is the first of many intriguing details, as it bears a remarkable resemblance to the depictions of other civilizing gods, like the Maya's Kukulkan, half a world away. His first act of creation, however, was one of imperfection. Viracocha fashioned a race of giants from stone to inhabit the barren earth, but these beings proved to be unruly and disobedient, so Viracocha sent a great flood to cleanse the world of them. After the deluge, he began his work anew, this time shaping humans from smaller, more manageable stones. But Viracocha was not a distant god who simply set the world in motion and then retreated. He became a walking teacher, a pilgrim god who traveled across the land, often in disguise, performing miracles and imparting the essential knowledge of civilization. He taught humanity how to live in harmony, giving them the principles of agriculture, language, the arts, and moral laws. He was a benefactor, a patient instructor walking among his creations, shaping them into a society. After his work was complete, Viracocha did not ascend to a heavenly abode to watch from afar. The legends state unequivocally that he walked to the western coast of South America and then departed across the Pacific Ocean, walking on the waves until he disappeared from sight. This is a crucial and tangible detail, a physical departure across a specific geographic boundary. It suggests a being with a mission that extended beyond the Andes, a traveler who arrived from one mysterious point and left for another, leaving behind a legacy of knowledge and a promise, echoed in some versions of the myth, that he would one day return. This concept of direct celestial lineage was not just abstract theology for the Inca. It was the absolute foundation of their political and social power. Parallel to the legend of Viracocha was the worship of Inti, the sun god. The Sapa Inca, the emperor himself, was believed to be a direct descendant of Inti, a living god king whose divine right to rule was as clear as the daylight. This was more than a symbolic claim, it was a matter of state doctrine. The Inca royal family was considered Intipchuran, the children of the sun, setting them apart as a separate, sacred class of beings. This divine ancestry justified the Incas' rapid expansion and their demand for tribute from conquered peoples. It was the reason the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun in Cuzco, was the most lavishly decorated building in the empire, its walls sheathed in gold to reflect the glory of their celestial ancestor. The mummified bodies of past Sapa Incas were treated as if they were still alive, consulted on important matters and paraded during ceremonies because their divine essence, their connection to Inti, was believed to persist after death. When we place these two beliefs side by side, the wandering, knowledge-bearing Viracocha and the sun-descended royal lineage, a fascinating pattern emerges. Could these legends be interconnected fragments of a larger historical narrative? The ancient astronaut theory proposes exactly that. Viracocha, with his advanced knowledge, his distinctive appearance unlike the indigenous people, and his physical journey across the ocean, fits the archetype of an extraterrestrial visitor or a survivor from a lost advanced civilization. His creation of a first, failed race of giants could be interpreted as an early genetic experiment, an attempt to create a suitable labor force that was later discarded in favor of the more successful modern humans. His role as a wandering teacher mirrors that of Osiris in Egypt or Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica, suggesting a global pattern of intervention by a common source of advanced knowledge. The Inca rulers' claim of direct descent from the sun god Inti takes on a new, more literal meaning in this context. If Viracocha and his kind were the original celestial beings, then the sun god Inti might not have been the literal ball of plasma in the sky, but rather a symbol for the home world or the leadership of these visitors. The Sapa Inca's divine bloodline, therefore, could represent a genuine, albeit diluted, genetic connection to these advanced beings, a lineage established to maintain order and preserve the knowledge they left behind. The Incas' incredible architectural achievements, like the precisely fitted stones of Sacsayhuaman that have withstood centuries of earthquakes, and their sophisticated understanding of astronomy, visible in sites like the sun-watching tower of Machu Picchu, are often attributed to their devotion to their celestial ancestors. But perhaps these feats of engineering were not developed in isolation. Perhaps they were the result of knowledge preserved from that initial contact, a technological legacy from the time when Viracocha walked the earth, a legacy that empowered the children of the sun to build one of the most extraordinary empires the world has ever seen. Our journey now carries us across the sea to the misty, emerald shores of ancient Ireland, a land where myth and history are so deeply intertwined they become one. Here, we encounter one of the most captivating and technologically suggestive pantheons in all of European lore, the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Danu. Their arrival, as chronicled in texts like the Liber Gabala Iren, the Book of Invasions, is not a quiet, spiritual manifestation but a dramatic, tangible event that reads like an account of an advanced fleet making landfall. The stories say they came to Ireland in flying ships, but these were not vessels that sailed the water. They arrived from the sky, descending in a great, shadowy cloud that blotted out the sun for 3 days. When the mist finally cleared, the Tuatha De Danann were standing on the soil of Ireland, having burned their ships to ensure there would be no retreat. This detail of the dark cloud is particularly evocative, as it could easily describe the exhaust plume or atmospheric disturbance caused by the landing of multiple advanced aircraft, a spectacle so overwhelming that the only way for witnesses to describe it was as a magical, sun-darkening fog. This race of beings was defined not by brute strength, but by an unparalleled mastery of what the ancient texts call magic, but which bears all the hallmarks of sophisticated science and technology. They brought with them 4 legendary treasures, each representing a pinnacle of specialized knowledge. The first was the Spear of Lug, which guaranteed victory to whoever wielded it. This sounds like a classic magical weapon, but consider it from another angle. A weapon that never misses its target could be an early description of a precision-guided projectile or an energy-based targeting system. The second was the Sword of Nuada, a blade that would inflict a mortal wound with every stroke and could not be drawn without claiming a life. This could be interpreted as a powerful directed energy weapon, perhaps a laser or plasma blade, with such a devastating effect that its mere activation was synonymous with destruction. The third treasure, the Cauldron of the Dagda, was a vessel from which no company ever went away unsatisfied, an endless source of sustenance. This is a classic symbol of abundance, but it also brings to mind the concept of a matter replicator or a device capable of synthesizing nourishment, a technology that would seem like miraculous providence to a primitive society. But the fourth and most significant treasure was the Lia Fail, the Stone of Destiny. This was not a mere rock, it was a sentient technological marvel. When the true High King of Ireland would place his foot upon it, the stone would shriek with a mighty cry, confirming his rightful sovereignty. This function is astonishingly specific. It suggests a sophisticated biometric or genetic testing device, programmed to recognize a specific royal bloodline. The idea of a stone that emits a loud, unmistakable sound upon contact with the rightful ruler goes far beyond simple symbolism and points toward a piece of advanced hardware used for leadership verification. The Tuatha De Danann were led by figures who exemplify this blend of the magical and the technological. Their king, Nuada, lost his arm in the first great battle for Ireland and had it replaced with a functional, silver prosthetic crafted by the physician god Dian Sec. This was not a cosmetic hook. The myths describe it as a fully articulated working arm. This account stands as one of the earliest and most explicit descriptions of advanced biomechanical prosthetics in world mythology, a clear example of what we would today call bionics. Then there was the Dagda, the good god, who possessed a massive club so heavy it took 8 men to carry it, yet he wielded it alone. One end of this club could kill the living, while the other end had the power to restore the dead to life. This duality is incredibly suggestive of a multi-purpose technological tool, perhaps a device that could emit a deadly energy field on one setting and a regenerative, healing frequency on another. Despite their immense power and technological superiority, the Tuatha De Danann were not invincible. They were eventually defeated by the Milesians, the ancestors of the modern Irish people, in a series of conflicts. Rather than being annihilated, the legends say they made a strategic withdrawal. Using their profound knowledge of the land and their mastery of illusion, they retreated into the thousands of ancient burial mounds and raths that dot the Irish landscape, places like the great Neolithic passage tomb of Newgrange. They became the Aos Shi, the people of the mounds, fading from the physical world into a parallel reality that coexists with our own just out of sight. This transition from a dominant physical presence to a hidden, subterranean one is a recurring theme in these global legends. It suggests that after a period of direct interaction and conflict with emerging humanity, these advanced beings chose to withdraw to a hidden base of operations, perhaps underground or in a different dimensional phase, continuing to observe from a distance. The Irish belief in the fairy folk, with their capricious nature and powerful magic, is a direct cultural descendant of the Tuatha De Danann. Their story encapsulates a complete narrative arc of arrival, technological display, conflict, and eventual retreat, preserving the memory of a time when beings of immense power walked the hills of Ireland, their advanced tools indistinguishable from the magic of the gods. Moving northeast from the Celtic mists, we enter the vast, snowy expanses of the ancient Slavic world, where the myths are as stark and beautiful as the winter landscape. Here we encounter a celestial being of pure, untamed wonder, the firebird. This is no ordinary creature of folklore. The firebird is described as a magnificent bird, often as large as a peacock, whose plumage glows with a light so intense it illuminates the darkest night. Each of its feathers is said to be a gleaming, fiery jewel, and even a single plume, if lost, can cast a radiant glow like 1,000 candles. But the firebird is more than just a beautiful spectacle. It represents a theme we've seen before, yet with a uniquely Slavic twist: the idea of a celestial gift that is both a blessing and a profound curse. The quest for the firebird is a central plot in many Slavic fairy tales, most famously in the story of Prince Ivan. The bird is not something to be hunted for sport. It is a near-divine entity whose very presence disrupts the natural order. Typically, the firebird begins the story by stealing the golden apples from the Tsar's magical orchard. This act alone is symbolic. The apples represent immortality or divine knowledge, and the firebird is a creature that freely partakes of this celestial sustenance. When the hero, often a young prince, is sent to capture it, he quickly learns that the firebird is both a prize and a test. Its feathers are said to grant wishes and bring great fortune, but possessing one inevitably draws the hero into a world of escalating danger, involving sinister sorcerers, impossible tasks, and a journey to a kingdom at the very edge of the world. This duality is the core of the firebird's meaning. It symbolizes a direct, tangible connection to the heavenly realm, a piece of advanced technology or energy that has fallen to Earth. A single feather is a power source, a tool of immense potential. But for the unprepared or the greedy, this power becomes a corrupting force, attracting trouble and demanding great wisdom to wield correctly. From an ancient astronaut perspective, the firebird could be interpreted as a drone or a probe of brilliant, unknown origin, perhaps even a creature of pure energy that occasionally enters our atmosphere. Its habit of stealing golden apples might represent it gathering data or samples from a protected, perhaps artificially maintained, garden. The hero's quest to capture it is not a hunt, but a trial to prove humanity's worthiness to interact with such advanced technology. The firebird is the ultimate MacGuffin, a glowing, elusive prize from the stars that forces those who seek it to confront their own character, making it a powerful metaphor for humanity's relationship with knowledge that is both divine and dangerous. But the Slavic celestial pantheon holds another, even more crucial set of figures, whose role is not about granting wishes but about preventing absolute catastrophe. These are the Zoria, the guardian goddesses of the dawn and the dusk. Their names are derived from the word for dawn, and they are most commonly depicted as two sisters, Zoria Utraniea, the morning star who opens the gates of the palace for the sun god Dajbog's chariot to depart at dawn, and Zoria Vechaniea, the evening star who closes the gates after his return at sunset. Their duty is a daily cosmic shift, maintaining the rhythm of day and night. In some traditions, however, there is a third, more enigmatic figure, Zoria Polonochnaya, the midnight star who watches over the darkest hours. The reason for their eternal vigilance is what makes their legend so gripping. The myths tell of a terrible, apocalyptic hound, often associated with the constellation we know as Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. This monstrous canine is chained to the North Star, Polaris, which the Slavs saw as the central pillar of the universe. The chains that bind the beast are incredibly fragile, and the hound constantly strains against them, gnawing and pulling, desperate to break free. If it ever succeeds, the legends say, it will devour the constellation and bring about the end of the world. The sole responsibility for ensuring this never happens falls to the Zoria sisters. It is their sacred duty to watch over the hound, to tend the chains, and to keep them strong. Should they ever falter in their watch for even a single moment, the universe would cease to exist. This is a cosmology of breathtaking fragility. The entire cosmic order depends on the unwavering diligence of these two celestial guardians. The imagery is stark and powerful. A chained monster of destruction, a single fixed point in the sky holding it back, and a pair of goddesses acting as the universe's ultimate security system. When we analyze this through a speculative lens, the allegorical possibilities are profound. The doomsday hound chained to the North Star could be a mythological representation of a cosmic threat, such as a black hole, a rogue planet, or a dangerous energy field that is somehow anchored or contained by a natural celestial phenomenon. The Zoria, then, are not merely personifications of the stars. They could be the symbolic representation of an ancient, automated monitoring system, or even a remembered account of a stationed crew tasked with maintaining the stability of this cosmic prison. Their association with the gates of the sun further connects them to concepts of orbital paths and celestial mechanics. The legend of the Zoria presents a universe that is not eternally stable, but one that is actively and precariously maintained, a concept that finds a surprising echo in modern astrophysics, where the stability of our solar system is understood to be a delicate balance of gravitational forces. In the dead of a Slavic night, looking up at the unmoving North Star, an ancient person might have felt not just wonder, but a shiver of awareness that the entire cosmos was balanced on a knife's edge, guarded only by the silent, watchful sisters of the dawn and dusk. Leaving behind the fragile cosmos of the Slavic Zoria, we travel now to the islands of Japan, where the very origin of the nation is traced to a single celestial ancestor whose temporary absence nearly ended all of creation. The Shinto religion, with its deep reverence for the sacred energies known as kami that infuse all of nature, centers on the sun goddess Amaterasu Omikami. She is not a distant, abstract deity. She is the divine progenitor of the Japanese imperial line and the radiant heart of the world itself. The most crucial story about her, the tale of the heavenly rock cave, is far more than a simple myth. It is a foundational drama about the delicate balance between the celestial and the earthly, a story where the light of the world itself hangs in the balance, saved not by force but by cleverness, community, and joy. The crisis begins not with an external threat, but with a grievous insult from within the divine family. Amaterasu's brother, Susanoo, the storm god, is a tempestuous and destructive force. After a series of violent outbursts that ruin Amaterasu's carefully tended rice fields and desecrate her sacred weaving hall, culminating in the death of one of her attendants, the sun goddess reaches her breaking point. In an act of profound grief and fury, she retreats into the Ama no Iwato, the heavenly rock cave, and seals the entrance with an immense boulder. The consequence is immediate and catastrophic. With Amaterasu, the source of all light, hidden away, the entire world is plunged into an eternal, chilling darkness. The sun, moon, and stars vanish. Life begins to wither, and spirits of chaos and mischief descend upon the earth. This is not a poetic description of a cloudy day. It is a depiction of a complete systemic failure of the cosmic order, a universe without its primary power source. Faced with this existential threat, the 8 million kami gather in desperation outside the cave. Their frantic discussions mark a pivotal moment in mythology. They cannot force the door open, they must persuade the sun to return. Their solution is a masterful display of psychological insight and collective action, a plan that combines spectacle, humor, and raw emotional appeal. First, they bring forth the roosters, whose crowing traditionally heralds the dawn, and have them crow incessantly outside the cave, creating the auditory illusion that a new day is beginning without her. Then they erect a large tree and decorate it with magnificent jewels, a mirror forged from polished metal, and ceremonial robes. The centerpiece of their strategy, however, is the goddess Aim no Usium, the spirit of mirth and revelry. With a divine audacity, Aim no Usium prepares to perform. She inverts a tub and stands upon it, creating a makeshift stage. Then she begins a dance that is both wildly energetic and deeply spiritual. She stamps her feet, claps her hands, and loses herself in the rhythm, whirling and leaping with such abandon that her clothing becomes loose. The other gods gathered around erupt in raucous laughter and cheers, their collective joy creating a palpable wave of energy. Inside her dark, silent prison, Amaterasu hears this unexpected commotion. The sound is not one of mourning or despair, but of unbridled celebration. Curiosity begins to stir within her. How can the gods be rejoicing when the world is shrouded in darkness? Unable to resist, she calls out, asking what could possibly be so amusing. Aim no Usium, perfectly in character, shouts back that they are celebrating because they have found a goddess greater and more magnificent than Amaterasu herself. This calculated provocation piques the sun goddess's pride. Intrigued and slightly offended, she cracks the great stone door open just enough to peer out. At that moment, the other gods hold up the magnificent mirror, the Yota no Kagami, positioning it directly in front of the opening. Amaterasu, who has never before seen her own radiant reflection, is stunned. She sees a being of blinding, brilliant light, and believing it to be this new, rival goddess, she steps further out of the cave to get a better look. Immediately, a god of immense strength, Tajikarau, who had been waiting in hiding, seizes the opportunity and pulls the great stone door fully open. Another god stretches a sacred rope, the Shaimnawa, behind her, symbolically preventing her from retreating back into seclusion. Light floods back into the world, life is restored, and order is re-established. The depth of this story is immense. On one level, it is a powerful allegory for the changing seasons, explaining the winter solstice and the joyous return of the sun's strength. But its true lessons are about harmony, or wa. Amaterasu's retreat was caused by a rupture in the harmony of the celestial family, the disruptive behavior of Susanoo. The solution was not a battle, but the restoration of harmony through collective effort, cleverness, and the irresistible power of laughter and art. Aim no Usium's dance is revered as the origin of Kagyura, the sacred ritual dances performed at Shinto shrines to this day, directly linking this ancient myth to living religious practice. The mirror, one of the 3 sacred imperial regalia of Japan, symbolizes self-reflection and the idea that the divine is not an external force to be worshipped from afar, but a brilliance that resides within the world and within ourselves. The story of the heavenly rock cave teaches that the cosmos is not maintained by brute force, but by balance, ritual, and the shared joy of a community united in purpose, a celestial truth that continues to illuminate Japanese culture. And so from the sun-drenched shores of Japan, we now journey back in time, back to the very cradle of civilization, to uncover yet another profound account of celestial instruction. The region of Mesopotamia, already home to the world-changing legend of the Anunnaki, holds another, perhaps even more enigmatic story of contact, this time not from the heavens directly, but from the waters that border the land. We arrive in ancient Babylonia and encounter the mysterious Apkallu sages, beings whose very form challenges our understanding of the teachers from the stars. The Apkallu were not gods in the traditional sense, but something else entirely, 7 primordial sages of immense wisdom, sent to humanity by the god of wisdom and fresh water, E, who was known to the Sumerians as Enki. Their name, Apkallu, translates to the wise or the expert, and their purpose was unequivocal: to serve as civilizing agents to impart the foundational knowledge that would raise humanity from a primitive state to an organized society. According to cuneiform texts, these 7 sages appeared before the Great Flood, a cataclysmic event recorded in Mesopotamian mythology that closely parallels the biblical story of Noah. In that antediluvian age, a time shrouded in myth and mystery, the Apkallu delivered the divine decrees or fundamental concepts of culture. They taught humanity the sacred laws that would govern society, the intricate art of writing on clay tablets, the science of agriculture and irrigation to master the unpredictable rivers, and the principles of architecture, medicine, and mathematics. In essence, they provided the complete blueprint for civilization itself. What makes the Apkallu immediately arresting, however, is their physical depiction in ancient art. They are consistently shown as hybrid creatures, part human and part fish. Often, they are portrayed as a human figure clothed in the skin of a fish, with the fish's head forming a distinctive hood over the human head, as if wearing a specialized suit. In other representations, the human torso emerges directly from the body of a fish. This is not a vague, mythical monster. It is a very specific and recurring iconography. The Babylonian tradition explicitly states that the Apkallu came from the Abzu, the subterranean freshwater ocean that was the domain of E. This origin from the deep waters, combined with their piscine appearance, creates a compelling narrative. The bringers of knowledge emerged not from the sky but from the sea. This motif connects directly to an even older Sumerian tradition, that of the Abgal, who served an identical role as pre-flood sages serving the god Enki. The continuity from the Sumerian Abgal to the Babylonian Apkallu shows that this was not a fleeting idea, but a deeply ingrained belief spanning millennia in the region. And when we widen our view, this pattern of civilizing heroes emerging from the water becomes a global phenomenon. We see it in the Odes of Berossus, a Babylonian priest who wrote for a Greek audience, describing a being who would emerge from the Persian Gulf by day to teach humanity and return to the sea at night. We see echoes of it in the fish like Namo of the Dogon, and even in the amphibious nature of many other water-associated deities. This persistent theme forces a critical question. Why would so many ancient cultures, separated by vast oceans, conceive of their primary teachers as beings intimately connected to water? One interpretation is purely symbolic. Water is the universal source of life, and the act of emerging from it can represent the birth of consciousness and order from the primordial chaos. The fish, a creature that lives in a world inaccessible to humans, could symbolize a being from a completely different realm of existence, a messenger from the unknown. Yet, the ancient astronaut theory offers a more technologically oriented explanation. Could the fish-like appearance of the Apkallu be a misinterpretation of something else entirely? Imagine an advanced being wearing a sleek, environmental suit designed for operations in a liquid environment. The scaly texture of the suit, the large, glassy helmet that distorts the features of the face, the integrated apparatus. To a prehistoric witness, this technology might be indistinguishable from the form of a fish man. The Abzu, the subterranean ocean from which they came, might not be a mythical place but could refer to a hidden base, perhaps established underwater or in a vast cavern system with a water source, a secure location from which these operations were launched. Their emergence from the water to teach humanity by day, as described with Odes, could detail a regular schedule of contact with the sages returning to their submerged habitat for rest and resupply. The timing of their mission is also profoundly significant. The Apkallu were active before the Great Flood. This positions them as agents of a pre-deluge, perhaps even global civilization. Their task was to implant the seeds of knowledge to ensure that even after a planet-altering cataclysm, humanity would have the tools to rebuild. The legend states that after the flood, the Apkallu were replaced by ordinary human sages, implying that the period of direct, hands-on guidance had ended, and humanity was now expected to steward its own destiny using the knowledge it had been given. The story of the Apkallu, therefore, is not just a quaint myth about fish people. It is a sophisticated narrative that accounts for the origin of civilization, ties it to a global cataclysm, and presents a specific physical description of the non-human intelligence responsible. It suggests that our earliest teachers may have been aquatic, or perhaps simply used aquatic environments as their base of operations, adding an entirely new dimension, quite literally, to the mystery of the celestial beings. Within the sacred texts of the Bible, the Quran, and other Abrahamic traditions, the celestial hierarchy is populated by beings of pure purpose and staggering power, entities far removed from the gentle, winged figures of modern holiday cards. These are the angels, and their primary role is not to watch over individuals from a cloud, but to serve as the messengers, warriors, and administrators of a divine cosmic order. At the very apex of this hierarchy exist the most awe-inspiring of these creatures, the seraphim and the cherubim. The prophet Isaiah provides a breathtaking vision of the seraphim, describing them not as humanoids with wings, but as fiery, six-winged beings who fly above the throne of God. With two wings they cover their faces, unable to look directly upon the divine glory. With two they cover their feet, a gesture of humility, and with the remaining two they perpetually fly. Their primary function is ceaseless worship, and their voice is so powerful that the very foundations of the temple shake when they call out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." These are not messengers sent to shepherds, they are living flames of pure adoration, the celestial atmosphere of God's immediate presence. In stark contrast, the cherubim are often misunderstood as chubby infants. Their biblical description is far more formidable and functional. After the fall of humanity, God stationed cherubim east of the Garden of Eden, armed with a flaming sword that turned every which way to guard the way to the tree of life. This is a role of immense responsibility and power, celestial security for a forbidden, sacred zone. The prophet Ezekiel delivers an even more complex and startling vision, describing the cherubim as a composite of four different faces, that of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, with multiple wings covered in eyes and wheels within wheels accompanying them, full of spirits and fire. This portrayal suggests a being of incomprehensible complexity, a hybrid of organic and mechanical elements, a living, mobile throne chariot for the divine. Far from being cute, the cherubim are the guardians of holiness and the agents of divine mobility, their very form reflecting a multifaceted intelligence beyond human grasp. Yet, the Abrahamic tradition holds a story even more unsettling and direct in its implications for human history, a narrative that delves into the controversial intersection of the celestial and the terrestrial. This is the enigmatic account of the Nephilim found in the 6th chapter of Genesis. The text states with startling brevity, "The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose." This simple sentence has spawned millennia of debate. Who were these sons of God? The most ancient interpretation, supported by numerous extra-biblical texts like the Book of Enoch, identifies them explicitly as angels, the Watchers, who descended from their heavenly post with a specific, forbidden purpose. They were not sent on a divine mission, they came of their own volition, transgressing the boundary between the spiritual and the physical realms. The consequence of this union was the Nephilim, a name often translated as the fallen ones, or more tellingly, those who caused others to fall. The Bible describes them as the heroes of old, men of renown, suggesting they were giants of immense stature and power. The Book of Enoch expands this narrative dramatically, detailing how these renegade watchers, led by a figure named Shemihaza, did more than just interbreed with humanity. They imparted forbidden knowledge, the secrets of metalworking, the making of weapons of war, the art of sorcery, and the knowledge of astrology and cosmetics. This was not a benevolent transfer of wisdom. It was an act of corruption that plunged the world into violence and chaos, directly leading to God's decision to send the Great Flood as a reset for a creation that had become irredeemably polluted. In this interpretation, the Nephilim were a hybrid species, a genetically engineered race of giants whose existence contaminated the human bloodline and whose tyrannical rule necessitated a planetary cleansing. Naturally, this literal angelic interpretation is not the only one. Many Jewish and Christian scholars throughout history have argued that the sons of God were not angels at all, but rather the righteous descendants of Seth, Adam's son, who intermarried with the wicked descendants of Cain. In this view, the Nephilim, or giants, were simply powerful, warlike chieftains, and the sin was one of spiritual compromise and violence, not a biological hybrid. This reading seeks to harmonize the passage with the theological principle that angels are spiritual beings without physical bodies or the capacity for procreation. However, the ancient astronaut theory finds the Watcher narrative profoundly compelling. It asks, what if this story is a thinly veiled account of genetic intervention by an advanced extraterrestrial race? The sons of God could be a group of these beings who broke from their primary mission to interact directly with primitive human women. The Nephilim, then, would be the literal offspring of this crossbreeding program, a hybrid species possessing enhanced physical and mental capabilities, remembered as giants and heroes. The forbidden knowledge they brought, metallurgy, weaponry, cosmology, perfectly aligns with the concept of a technological leap imposed from an outside source. The subsequent Great Flood in this scenario is not an act of divine punishment for sin, but a deliberate, catastrophic event orchestrated by a superior command to eliminate a failed genetic experiment that was spiraling out of control. The story of the Nephilim, whether read as theology, mythology, or ancient history, remains one of the most provocative accounts in any sacred text, presenting a scenario where the celestial and the human realms did not just interact, but merged, with consequences that allegedly reshaped the very destiny of our world. But what if the celestial beings that guided our ancestors were not singular entities, but a vast, interconnected network of spiritual energies, a cosmic system of order and protection designed to nurture creation itself? This brings us to the ancient Persian world and the profound, intricate cosmology of Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest continuously practiced religions. At its heart is a vision of the universe as a cosmic battlefield between the forces of light, truth, and order, represented by the supreme wise lord Ahura Mazda and the destructive spirit of falsehood and chaos Angra Mainyu. And in this great struggle, humanity is not a passive spectator but an active participant, aided by two extraordinary classes of celestial beings, the collective might of the Fravashis and the guiding intelligence of the Amesha-Spentas. The concept of the Fravashi is both beautiful and powerfully unique. In Zoroastrian belief, every single creature, every human, animal, and plant, and even every component of nature and the divine itself, possesses a Fravashi. This is not a soul in the common sense, but rather a pre-existing celestial double or guardian spirit. Think of it as your perfect divine blueprint, an ideal version of yourself that exists in a radiant heavenly state even before your birth. Your Fravashi is your personal celestial advocate, a warrior spirit that fights for you in the cosmic battle against darkness. It is a source of inner strength, inspiration, and moral courage, whispering guidance to your earthly consciousness and helping you choose the path of righteousness. But the Fravashis are not just individual guardians, they also form a vast collective army. They are described as riding forth like mighty warriors to do battle against the forces of chaos, and in a stunning inversion of typical religious practice, it is believed that humans can actually aid and strengthen their own Fravashis through their good thoughts, good words, and good deeds on earth. This creates a reciprocal relationship between heaven and earth, where our actions here empower our celestial defenders there. Alongside this vast spiritual army operates a divine council of archangels known as the Amesha-Spentas, or the Holy Immortals or Bounteous Immortals. These 6 beings are not separate gods, but are direct emanations or aspects of Ahura Mazda himself, personifications of his divine attributes that serve to organize and govern the physical and moral universe. Each Amsha Spenta presides over a specific aspect of creation and a corresponding virtue within the human heart. Vohumana represents good purpose and is the guardian of cattle, symbolizing the right intention and gentle stewardship of the animal kingdom. Ashavahishta is the embodiment of truth and righteousness, the cosmic order that governs the stars and seasons, and the fire that burns away falsehood. Spenta Amati is devotion and serenity associated with the earth, representing the patient, nurturing care we must show our planet. Kshathra Varya is desirable dominion, the power of just rule and well-made metals, governing over the sky and the ideal of a perfect society. Horvatat signifies wholeness and health, presiding over the waters, and Amaret represents immortality and is the guardian of plants. This system is a masterpiece of integrated cosmology. The Amsha Spentas are not remote administrators. They are the divine principles that make a moral and orderly life possible. To honor the earth is to align oneself with Spenta Amati. To seek truth is to invoke Ashavahishta. To work for a just society is to collaborate with Kshathra Varya. Humanity's role is to recognize these divine forces in the world around them, and through their actions, help these holy immortals in their work of perfecting creation. The Zoroastrian vision presents a universe that is fundamentally good and structured for our benefit, populated by a host of benevolent celestial intelligences whose sole purpose is to guide, protect, and empower us in the great work of overcoming darkness. It is a cosmology that offers not fear, but partnership with the cosmos itself. Leaving behind the intricate cosmic hierarchies of Zoroastrianism, we now travel to the lush, volcanic islands of Hawaii, where the legends speak not of gods in the heavens, but of a mysterious people who worked wonders on the earth under the cover of darkness. Here, we encounter the Menehune, a race of small-statured beings who are far more than the simple fairy folk of tourist souvenirs. In Hawaiian tradition, the Menehune were a reclusive, powerfully built people, often described as being between 2 and 3 feet tall, yet possessing incredible strength and a genius for engineering. They were the master builders of ancient Hawaii, credited with the construction of some of the island's most impressive and enduring structures, all under one strict and fascinating condition. Their work had to be completed in a single night. The physical evidence of their legendary prowess is still visible today. On the island of Kauai, the Elikoko fish pond, also known as the Menehune fish pond, features a massive stone wall over 900 feet long that was constructed to raise fish in a protected estuary. The technical skill required to build such a structure in a tidal area is immense. Similarly, the Kikiaola Ditch, another Kauai landmark, demonstrates sophisticated aqueduct engineering, channeling water with precisely cut and fitted stones that have withstood centuries. The most compelling aspect of these stories is the consistent narrative that the Menehune would only work from sunset to sunrise. If a project was not finished by the first light of dawn, they would abandon it completely, leaving their half-built creations scattered across the landscape. This nocturnal deadline adds a layer of intriguing specificity, suggesting a people who either preferred to remain unseen or were perhaps constrained by some unknown physical law or cultural taboo against working in the daylight. So, who were the Menehune? Mainstream anthropology offers a compelling, earth-bound explanation. Many scholars propose that the Menehune legends are a cultural memory of the island's earliest inhabitants, a wave of Polynesian settlers who arrived from the Marquesas Islands around the 4th or 5th century. According to this theory, these first settlers were later conquered or absorbed by a second, larger migration of Tahitians. The original inhabitants, smaller in stature and possessing distinct knowledge, may have been driven into the remote, mountainous valleys of Kauai and became the basis for the Menehune myth. Their incredible engineering feats, then, would be the actual accomplishments of this earlier culture, whose true history was eventually mythologized by their successors. The single night aspect could be a metaphorical way of saying their work was accomplished with a speed and efficiency that seemed magical to later generations. However, another interpretation looks at the same details and sees a different possibility. Ancient astronaut theorists and other alternative historians ask whether the descriptions of the Menehune could point to something other than a lost human tribe. Their small stature, immense strength, and unparalleled engineering skills are characteristics often associated with the concept of a different biological species or even an artificially created worker caste. The insistence on working only at night is particularly suggestive. Could this be a cultural memory of a group of beings who were photosensitive, unable to tolerate direct sunlight for prolonged periods? Or was the cover of darkness necessary to conceal their advanced construction techniques from ordinary humans? The structures they built with their precisely fitted stones that require no mortar echo the mysterious megalithic sites found across the globe from Peru to Egypt, often attributed to forgotten advanced cultures or outside assistance. The most speculative theory proposes that the Menehune were not of this earth at all. Their reputation as phenomenal builders who worked with stone and water could be a fragmented memory of a small-statured, technologically advanced group that visited the islands in the distant past. In this scenario, their magical ability to complete massive projects overnight might involve technologies like anti-gravity or acoustic levitation to move heavy stones, methods that would appear supernatural to the observing Hawaiian people. Their subsequent disappearance into the deepest forests and most remote valleys mirrors the pattern we've seen with the Tuatha De Danann of Ireland, who retreated into the mounds. The Menehune are said to still live in the hidden places of Hawaii, largely unseen, their legacy cemented in the very landscape. Whether remembered as the first Hawaiians or as enigmatic visitors from another world, the legend of the Menehune endures as a testament to the island's deep past, a story of mysterious little people whose silent, nightly labor helped shape the world we see today. High in the thin, rarefied air of the Himalayan plateau, where the sky is a deep, penetrating blue and the mountains seem to scrape the heavens themselves, we find a legend that has captivated the world yet remains deeply misunderstood. The Yeti, or the abominable snowman, is often relegated to the realm of cryptozoology, a mere hairy brute lurking in the snow. But to the Tibetan and Sherpa peoples who inhabit this roof of the world, the Yeti is not an isolated monster. It is a single, enigmatic piece in a far grander and more complex cosmological puzzle, a puzzle that involves hidden dimensions, enlightened beings, and celestial realms that exist parallel to our own. To understand the Yeti's true place, we must first step into the vast spiritual landscape of Tibetan Buddhism. This is a worldview that envisions a multiverse comprised of multiple layers of existence, known as realms or lokas. These are not distant planets in a science fiction sense, but rather different planes of consciousness and reality that interpenetrate our own. Chief among these are the Devalokas, the celestial realms inhabited by enlightened beings, bodhisattvas, and gods. These are realms of immense beauty, longevity, and spiritual power, but they are still within the cycle of samsara, the endless round of birth, death, and rebirth. The beings there are not eternal, they too are on a spiritual journey. The crucial point is that these realms are not abstract concepts. They are described as tangible places, accessible through advanced meditation, through portals hidden in the landscape, or at moments of spiritual convergence. The Himalaya, piercing the highest reaches of the physical world, are seen as a natural bridge to these higher dimensions, a place where the veil between worlds is whisper-thin. It is within this context of permeable realities that the concept of Baal emerges, the legendary hidden valleys. Tibetan tradition speaks of a network of these sanctuaries, concealed by the great sage Padmasambhava in the 8th century as sacred refuges for times of great social and spiritual turmoil. These are not merely hidden canyons, they are described as paradisiacal realms, lush and fertile, shielded from the outside world by magical barriers or illusory rock faces. To find a Baal requires not just a map, but immense spiritual purity and the right karmic destiny. The harsh, high-altitude environment, with its sudden blizzards, treacherous passes, and disorienting vastness, naturally fosters these legends. A traveler could stumble into a hidden valley, experience its wonders, and then find it impossible to locate again, their account dismissed as a hallucination born of altitude sickness. This interplay of extreme geography and spiritual belief creates a perfect backdrop for encounters with beings that do not seem to belong to our ordinary world. And this is where the Yeti finds its deeper meaning. In Tibetan lore, the creature is known as the Migoi, which translates tellingly to wild man or strong man. While it is indeed described as a large, bipedal, ape-like creature, its characteristics go beyond the purely physical. It is said to possess a powerful, unpleasant odor, to be incredibly strong, and to be capable of evading human contact with an almost supernatural elusiveness. But rather than being a mere animal, many traditional accounts place the Migoi within the Buddhist framework of rebirth. It is often considered a being trapped in a lower realm, perhaps a manifestation of a troubled spirit or a creature existing in a state of karmic confusion. Its habitat, the remote, icy crags and dense, untouched forests, are the borderlands between our human realm and the other lokas. Its eerie, whistling call echoing through the mountain silence is not just the sound of a beast, but interpreted by some as a lament, a signal from a being caught between worlds. This perspective transforms the Yeti from a biological oddity into a potential cosmological signpost. Could the persistent sightings and tracks be glimpses of a creature that normally inhabits one of these adjacent realms, occasionally crossing over into our physical dimension? The idea that the Devalokas are inhabited by various types of beings, some more ethereal and others more physical, allows for the possibility that the Migoi is a tangible denizen of a reality that usually remains just out of sight. Its elusive nature is not just a function of its rarity, but of its fundamental existence on a different vibrational frequency, only becoming partially visible under specific, unknown conditions. The Yeti, therefore, is not an ancestor or a missing link, but a contemporary co-inhabitant of a multidimensional universe, a living reminder that the majestic, forbidding peaks of Tibet are not just mountains of rock and ice, but sacred thresholds to celestial realms beyond our ordinary perception. From the hidden valleys of the Himalayas, we now journey to the heart of the ancient Persian Empire, where mythology painted the cosmos with creatures of immense wisdom and grandeur, beings that served as the very embodiment of divine favor. Here, soaring above the peaks of the mythical Mount Alborz, we encounter the Simurgh, a creature so magnificent that it transcends the very concept of a mere bird. This is not a beast of prey or a simple magical animal. The Simurgh is a celestial entity, a serene and ancient repository of all knowledge, a living bridge between the earth and the highest heavens. Its name itself hints at its awe-inspiring nature, often interpreted as a combination of the Persian words for 30 and bird, suggesting a creature 30 times the size of an ordinary bird or possessing the wisdom of 30 generations. Imagine a being so vast that its wingspread when it takes flight darkens the sky and causes the fruit to fall from the trees. Its plumage is a breathtaking tapestry of peacock-like brilliance, shimmering with all the colors of the known world, yet it is also described as having the head of a dog and the claws of a lion, a composite form that speaks of its dominion over all earthly creatures. But the Simurgh's true power lies not in its physical majesty, but in its age and intellect. It is said to have lived for 1,700 years before the first human walked the earth, and it will see the destruction of the world 3 times over, gaining the knowledge of every age it witnesses. Having lived so long, the Simurgh has seen empires rise and fall, learned the secrets of every plant and stone, and understands the language of all beings. It is this profound, accumulated wisdom that makes the Simurgh a master healer. In its nest high on the world tree that stands in the middle of the cosmic ocean, it nurtures a plant with miraculous restorative properties, and its very feathers are said to possess the power to cure any ailment and burn away falsehood. This role as a benevolent protector and guide is central to the Simurgh's most famous appearance, in the epic Persian poem the Shahnameh, or the Book of Kings, by the poet Ferdowsi. The story involves the hero Zal. Born with hair as white as snow, Zal is rejected by his father, the King Sam, who sees the infant's appearance as a demonic omen. The baby is abandoned at the foot of Mount Alborz, left to perish, but the Simurgh, hearing the child's cries, does not see a monster, it sees a soul destined for greatness. The great bird carries Zal to its lofty nest and raises him as its own, imparting to him the wisdom of the ages. When Zal is finally rediscovered by his remorseful father, the Simurgh does not let him leave empty-handed. As a parting gift, the bird plucks one of its own golden feathers and gives it to the young man, instructing him that if he is ever in mortal danger, he need only burn the feather, and the Simurgh will come from the ends of the earth to his aid. This is not the relationship of a master and a pet, but of a divine mentor and a chosen pupil, a bond of deep, reciprocal loyalty that defines the Simurgh as a fundamentally compassionate force in the universe. Yet the Simurgh's significance extends far beyond a single heroic fosterage. It is intrinsically linked to one of the most potent concepts in ancient Persian kingship, the Far, or the divine royal glory. The Far was not merely a symbol of power, it was a tangible, luminous energy, a halo of divine approval that radiated from a truly just and legitimate ruler. It was believed that this glory was bestowed by the supreme god Ahura Mazda, and it was the source of a king's authority, his military success, and the prosperity of his kingdom. The catch, however, was that the Far was conditional. It would only remain with a ruler as long as he governed with righteousness, truth, and justice. The moment a king became arrogant, cruel, or deceitful, the Far would desert him, often depicted as fleeing in the form of a bird, and his reign would inevitably collapse into ruin. And this is where the Simurgh takes on its deepest symbolic meaning. The great bird is often seen as a guardian or a manifestation of this very Far. Its association with purity, wisdom, and its celestial nature makes it the perfect embodiment of the divine favor that a righteous king must cultivate. The Simurgh does not grant the Far arbitrarily. Its presence in a myth is an indicator that the hero or king in question is acting in alignment with the cosmic order with a Shah. When the Simurgh aids Zal, it is an act of recognizing the inherent justice in saving an innocent child, and in doing so, it sets him on a path that will eventually lead to his own son, the greatest of all Persian heroes, Rostam. The Simurgh's role, therefore, is that of a cosmic arbiter, a celestial being that guides and protects those who are chosen to bear the heavy responsibility of the Far, ensuring that its light shines upon the world through a just ruler. It represents the ideal that true power is not taken by force, but is earned through virtue and maintained by a sacred covenant with the divine, a concept that resonates with a profound and timeless truth about the nature of legitimate authority. But it is among the vast, interconnected cultures of native North America that we find one of the most profound and widespread traditions of celestial contact, a belief system that sees humanity not as orphans in the cosmos, but as children of the stars. Across hundreds of distinct tribes and nations, from the Great Plains to the desert Southwest, stories echo of the Star People, benevolent sky beings who descended from the heavens to guide and teach. This is not a singular, monolithic myth, but a tapestry of related narratives, each tribe weaving the fundamental truth of celestial visitation into the unique fabric of their own identity and landscape, creating a chorus of voices that all sing of a shared origin in the stars. Perhaps no single story better exemplifies this sacred relationship than the Lakota legend of Tessin Y, the white buffalo calf woman. Her arrival was an event of breathtaking solemnity and power. During a time of great hardship, when the people were suffering from famine and discord, two young hunters spotted a beautiful, ethereal woman approaching them, dressed in white buckskin and radiating a sacred presence. One of the young men was overcome with impure thoughts and moved to embrace her disrespectfully. In that instant, a swirling cloud descended and enveloped him, and when it lifted, he was nothing but a skeleton being picked clean by serpents. A stark lesson in the consequences of failing to approach the celestial with proper reverence. The other hunter, who had remained humble and prayerful, was instructed to return to his village and prepare the people for her coming. When Tessin Y entered the camp, her presence brought immediate awe and transformation. She carried with her a sacred bundle and spent 4 days with the Lakota, imparting the most foundational elements of their culture. She gifted them the chanunpa, the sacred pipe, demonstrating how its smoke carried their prayers to the Great Spirit. She taught them the 7 sacred rituals that would structure their spiritual lives, including the sweat lodge for purification, the vision quest for guidance, and the sun dance, the great ceremony of renewal and sacrifice. After bestowing these gifts, she departed as miraculously as she had arrived, walking away across the prairie, rolling over and over until she transformed into a white buffalo calf, a creature of immense spiritual significance, and vanished. This narrative is far more than a folk tale. It is the Lakota's account of their cultural genesis, a direct and documented transfer of knowledge from a celestial being who came not with weapons, but with spiritual tools for living in harmony with the earth and the cosmos. This theme of celestial teachers is a continental constant. The Hopi, whose Kachina traditions we explored earlier, speak of their ancestors emerging into this world through a sipapu, a sacred portal from the underworld guided by the Star People. The Navajo creation stories describe the holy people who journeyed through a series of worlds, eventually ascending to become the constellations that watch over them. In the Pacific Northwest, tribes like the Tlingit and Haida recount how Raven, the great trickster and transformer, brought light, fire, and fresh water to the world, often acquiring these essentials through journeys to the sky world. These stories consistently portray the Star People not as distant, indifferent gods, but as involved pedagogical figures. They are described as instructors who taught agriculture, astronomy, medicinal knowledge, and moral laws. They provided the blueprints for sustainable living, showing how to hunt respectfully, when to plant crops by reading the stars, and how to maintain balance within the community and with the natural world. What makes this pan-tribal belief so compelling is the underlying consistency of the message, despite the vast geographical and cultural distances separating these nations. The common thread is that human civilization, in its most essential and virtuous form, was not developed entirely through trial and error, but was, in a very real sense, taught. The knowledge needed to thrive was a gift, a celestial curriculum delivered by enlightened beings who cared for humanity's development. This perspective fundamentally reshapes the relationship between the people and the cosmos. The night sky is not a cold, empty void. It is the ancestral home, a place populated by benevolent relatives who continue to watch over them. The stars are not random points of light, but the campfires of the Star People, a constant reminder that we are part of a larger cosmic family. This worldview fosters a deep sense of belonging and responsibility, our understanding that the wisdom needed to live a good life was literally handed down from the heavens, and it is our sacred duty to preserve and honor that gift. Far to the north, where the endless winter nights are illuminated by the shimmering dance of the aurora borealis, the people of Finland forged an epic that resonates with the very rhythms of nature and the mysteries of creation. The Kalevala, a monumental work compiled in the 19th century from ancient oral poetry, is more than a collection of myths. It is the soul of a nation, a tapestry woven with shamanic chants, heroic quests, and a profound connection to the celestial. At the heart of this epic lies a singular, enigmatic object of desire, the Sampo. This is not a sword or a jewel, but something far more intriguing, a magical artifact that functions like a cosmic engine for prosperity, and its story is one of the most compelling legends of celestial technology in world mythology. The creation of the Sampo is a tale of divine craftsmanship. The celestial smith responsible for its forging is Ilmarinen, one of the great heroes of the Kalevala. Ilmarinen is no ordinary blacksmith. He is an eternal artificer, a being who hammered the very dome of the sky into place and set the stars in their constellations. He is the embodiment of skill and invention, a proto-scientist whose workshop produces wonders. The task of creating the Sampo is given to him as a near-impossible challenge by the mistress of Pohjola, the dark and cold northern realm, in exchange for the right to marry her daughter. The epic describes Ilmarinen's labor in fascinating detail. He does not simply hammer iron at an anvil. He spends 3 days searching for the right materials, eventually using the tips of swan feathers, the milk of a barren cow, a single grain of barley, and the finest lamb's wool. These are not typical metals, but ingredients suggesting a process far more alchemical or even biological in nature. With these components, Ilmarinen forges the Sampo, a device described as having a brightly covered lid and miraculously producing endless flour, salt, and gold from one side while grinding out abundance from the other. The function of the Sampo is what captures the modern imagination. It was not merely a treasure chest, it was a perpetual motion machine of prosperity. For the people of Pohjola, it guaranteed limitless wealth and food, creating a veritable golden age for its owners. The description of it grinding out sustenance and precious materials points to a technology that could manipulate matter itself, perhaps even a primitive cultural memory of a sophisticated machine for processing resources or generating energy. Its brightly covered lid, spinning continuously, evokes the image of a rotor or a turbine, a piece of advanced machinery whose principle of operation was lost to time, leaving only the myth of its magical output. The Sampo's power was so foundational that it became the economic heart of a kingdom, making its possessors invincible not through military might but through unparalleled abundance. Naturally, such a prize could not remain in one place. The heroes of Kalevala, led by the wise old bard Väinämöinen and the impulsive warrior Lemminkainen, covet the Sampo for their own people. They embark on a perilous quest across the sea to Pohjola to steal it, a venture that reads like a classic heist story with mythological stakes. After a fierce battle, they succeed in seizing the Sampo and embark on their return voyage. But the journey home ends in catastrophe. The mistress of Pohjola pursues them, conjuring a terrible storm. In the chaos, the Sampo is lost overboard, shattering on the seabed. The heroes manage to salvage only small fragments of the lid, which, the epic says, are why Finland still enjoys some modest measure of nature's bounty to this day. The vast majority of the Sampo, however, is lost forever at the bottom of the sea. This tragic loss is the core of the legend's power. The shattering of the Sampo represents the end of a golden age, a fall from a state of divine provided abundance into a world of hard work and scarcity. It symbolizes a forgotten zenith of technology or a lost connection to a celestial source of power. The fact that it rests on the ocean floor has led to fascinating speculation. Could this be a metaphorical memory of an advanced civilization that succumbed to a great flood? Its technology lost beneath the waves, the fragments that wash ashore bringing partial prosperity, suggest that some residual knowledge or blessing remained, but the core technology was irrecoverably lost. The quest for the Sampo, therefore, is not just an adventure, it is a mournful echo of humanity's desire to reclaim a lost paradise, a time when the gods or beings with god-like technology provided for all needs without toil. The Kalevala, through the myth of the Sampo, preserves the haunting memory of a time when magic and machinery were one, and the world was filled with a prosperity we can now only dimly imagine. But our journey across the globe now takes us to the vibrant archipelago of the Philippines, where a different kind of celestial drama unfolds not in the heavens alone, but in the restless waters below. Here, the awe-inspiring spectacle of an eclipse is not a quiet astronomical event, but a life-or-death struggle between the moon and a terrifying sea serpent known as the Bacanawa. This dragon-like creature of the deep is no mere monster. It is a primal force of chaos, a being whose hunger threatens the very light of the night, and whose legend inspired one of the most visceral and communal rituals in ancient astronomy. The mythology presents the Bacanawa as a colossal serpent dwelling in the darkest trenches of the ocean. Its origins vary across the many islands, with some stories claiming it was once a beautiful goddess transformed by jealousy or a powerful spirit of the sea. But its most defining characteristic is its insatiable appetite for the moon. The ancient Filipinos observed that the moon, with its gentle, silvery light, held a profound influence over the tides, the planting cycles, and the rhythms of life. The Bacanawa, a creature of the ocean, saw this celestial body not as a distant rock, but as a rival power, a luminous pearl hanging in the sky that it desperately desired to possess. The serpent's method was as direct as it was terrifying. When the moon was full and brightest, the Bacanawa would rise from the depths, its massive, coiling body breaking the surface of the sea as it ascended into the sky, its gaping maw opening wide to devour the moon whole. The gradual darkening of the lunar surface during an eclipse was interpreted as the serpent slowly swallowing its prey, plunging the world into an ominous, shadowy darkness. This was not a passive observation. For ancient communities whose survival depended on the predictable cycles of nature, the disappearance of the moon was a moment of supreme crisis. It signaled the temporary victory of chaos over order, a time when malevolent spirits were thought to roam freely and the natural world was thrown into imbalance. But the people were not powerless. They believed they could directly intervene in this cosmic battle. The solution was a practice known as pag-ungangalit, a communal effort to create an overwhelming cacophony. As soon as the eclipse began, entire villages would spring into action. People would rush from their homes, banging together pots and pans, pounding on drums, blowing on shell trumpets, and shouting at the top of their lungs. The goal was simple: to create such a terrifying racket that it would startle the Bacanawa, causing it to cough up the moon and retreat back into the ocean. The legend says that the serpent, disturbed by the sudden, violent noise, would release its prize and the moon would slowly reappear, its light restoring order to the world. What makes the Bacanawa legend so remarkable is its perfect fusion of myth and empirical science. On one hand, it is a powerful allegory for the eternal struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos. The Bacanawa represents the unpredictable and often dangerous power of the natural world: the typhoons, the volcanic eruptions, the tsunamis that could strike without warning. The moon represents stability, guidance, and life. The ritual of noise-making was an act of communal defiance, a way for people to assert control over a frightening and unexplainable event. It gave them a sense of agency in a universe that could often feel capricious and hostile. On the other hand, the story encodes a sophisticated understanding of a natural phenomenon. Ancient Filipinos, through careful, generations-long observation, had correctly linked the cause of an eclipse to a specific celestial body, the moon, and they had accurately predicted its cyclical nature. They may not have understood orbital mechanics, but they knew the pattern. The ritual itself, born from this myth, required precise timing. The noise had to begin as the eclipse started and continue until it ended, demonstrating a keen awareness of the event's duration. This practical, action-oriented response to an eclipse is a testament to the human drive to find meaning and exert influence, turning a moment of fear into a community-wide ceremony of unity and purpose. The legend of the Bacanawa is therefore far more than a simple folk tale. It is a cultural artifact that preserves both the poetic imagination and the observational genius of a people who looked at the darkened moon and saw not a void, but a dragon that needed to be scared away. Crossing now from the sun-drenched islands of the Pacific to the misty, enchanted landscapes of medieval Britain, we enter a realm where history and myth are so deeply intertwined they become a single tapestry. Here, in the enduring legends of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, we encounter a figure of profound mystery and power who operates not from a castle or a forest, but from the silent, reflective depths of a lake. This is the Lady of the Lake, an enchantress whose actions shape the very destiny of Camelot, and whose nature suggests a being far more ancient and otherworldly than a simple medieval sorceress. While Arthur and his knights represent a code of chivalry and earthly power, the lady exists in a space between worlds, her home beneath the water serving as a possible gateway to a celestial dimension. Her most famous and pivotal act is the bestowal of the sword Excalibur, the iconic image of a hand clad in white samite rising from the still waters of a lake, presenting the legendary blade to the future king, is one of the most powerful in all of Western literature. But this is no random gift. In many versions of the tale, most notably in Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, the sword is not pulled from a stone in a public contest. That was a test of Arthur's rightful lineage. Excalibur, given by the lady, is something else entirely. It is a weapon of supernatural origin, its scabbard possessing the even greater magic of preventing its wearer from losing any blood, making Arthur nearly invincible in battle. The lady doesn't merely provide a tool, she provides a technology. This act establishes her not as a subject of Arthur's kingdom, but as a patron, a benefactor from a higher order of power who chooses to empower the mortal king. Her authority comes from a source beyond the feudal system, implying she operates under a different set of laws, a different understanding of destiny. The lake, therefore, is not just a hiding place, it is an armory, a vault where artifacts of immense power are kept until the appointed time for their release into the world of men. Beyond her role as the keeper of Excalibur, the lady functions as a guardian and educator for some of the legend's most crucial figures. She is the foster mother of Lancelot du Lac, whose very name, of the lake, marks him as her protégé. She raises him in her watery domain, training him in the arts of combat and chivalry until he surpasses all other knights. This act of nurturing a human child in an otherworldly environment is a recurring motif we've seen with figures like the Simurgh raising Zal. It suggests a deliberate program of intervention, where a celestial intelligence prepares a specific individual to play a critical role in the affairs of the surface world. Later, after the fall of Merlin, it is the Lady of the Lake who becomes the guardian of the great wizard, entrapping him in a cave or a tower of air through her own superior magic. This demonstrates that her power is not merely complementary to the male magicians of the age, but ultimately superior, capable of neutralizing the very architect of Arthur's kingdom. She is a check and balance on power, an agent who gives and takes away according to a grand design that remains mysterious to the human players. The central mystery of the lady is her home. A lake is a liminal space, a threshold between the solid earth we inhabit and the unseen world of the depths. In countless mythologies, water serves as a barrier or a portal to other realms. The Celtic otherworld, for instance, was often accessed through lakes, mounds, and mist. The lady's ability to reside, breathe, and command power from within this element strongly suggests that her true origin is not of our world. The lake could be a physical manifestation of a dimensional gateway, a stabilized portal to what we might call another plane of existence. Her palace beneath the waves, described in some tales as the magnificent city of Avalon, is not a sunken ruin but a thriving, parallel reality. From this perspective, the lady is not an enchantress in the sense of a human who learned magic, but an extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional being whose natural habitat is this interstitial zone. Her appearances rising from the water without warning, often in a radiant, majestic form, are not magical teleportation but emergences from her base of operations into our reality. The magic she wields is the advanced technology or inherent ability of her species, perceived as sorcery by the technologically primitive humans of the Dark Ages. This interpretation transforms the entire Arthurian cycle. The struggle for Camelot is not just a human drama of loyalty, betrayal, and quest for the divine. It becomes a story of managed contact. The Lady of the Lake and beings like her are the overseers, providing humanity with tools like Excalibur to see if we can wield great power with wisdom. The eventual failure of Arthur's dream, culminating in the return of Excalibur to the lake when Sir Bedivere throws it back to the waiting hand, can be seen as the conclusion of an experiment. The weapon is reclaimed by its celestial owners because humanity, in its current state, has proven itself unworthy of its power. The lady vanishes back into the mists and the gateway to Avalon closes, leaving behind only a legend of a golden age and a mysterious benefactress from the deep. She remains one of the most compelling figures in this global puzzle, a silent, powerful presence who guided a kingdom from the shadows of a lake, a living symbol of the idea that the sources of our greatest power and wisdom may not lie on land, but in the uncharted, celestial depths just beyond our sight. While the grand narratives of Rome and Greece often dominate our view of the ancient world, there existed a civilization on the Italian peninsula whose spirituality was so distinct it continues to captivate and puzzle historians to this day. The Etruscans, the sophisticated and powerful people who would profoundly influence early Rome, possessed a religion that was not focused on distant, omnipotent gods, but on a meticulous and intimate relationship with the divine, mediated by a fascinating class of celestial beings known as the Lossa. These were not the stern, judgmental figures of later myth, but beautiful, benevolent intermediaries who moved effortlessly between the realms of gods and mortals, reflecting an Etruscan world where the celestial was woven into the very fabric of daily life. The Lossa were most commonly depicted as youthful, graceful figures, often in pairs or small groups, their most striking feature being the magnificent wings that sprouted from their backs or ankles. They appear everywhere in Etruscan art, from the walls of elaborate tombs to the surfaces of hand-held bronze mirrors. Unlike the powerful major gods like Tinia, the sky god equivalent to Zeus or Jupiter, the Lossa were not rulers or creators. Their role was that of attendants, messengers, and personal guardians. They are frequently shown accompanying greater deities, holding their helmets or handing them their weapons, but they also interact directly with humans. In countless scenes on ornate bronze mirrors, a Lossa might be depicted assisting a mortal woman as she adorns herself, or gently guiding a soul on its journey to the afterlife. This accessibility is what sets them apart. They were not feared but revered as compassionate helpers, a celestial presence that cared for the intimate details of human existence, from personal vanity to the ultimate transition of death. This connection to fate and the afterlife is a cornerstone of the Lossa's significance. The Etruscans had a profound and unique belief in a predetermined destiny, a cosmic script that was carefully documented and observed. The Lossa were intimately involved in this process. One of the most poignant and common scenes in Etruscan tomb paintings shows a Lossa present at the moment of death, often holding a scroll, a divine ledger recording the individual's fate or guiding them gently towards the underworld. This portrayal transforms the Lossa from simple attendants into psychopomps, conductors of souls, but with a distinctly Etruscan flavor. Their presence is not grim or frightening. It is serene and beautiful, suggesting that the passage to the next life was not something to be dreaded, but a transition overseen by benevolent celestial beings. This belief offered immense comfort, framing death not as an end, but as a journey supervised by graceful, winged guardians. When we analyze the Lossa through a comparative lens, their uniqueness becomes even more apparent. The Greeks had their nymphs and lesser spirits, and the Romans their genii and lares household guardians, but the Lossa do not fit neatly into either category. They are more personal and involved than the often aloof Greek nymphs, and they possess a more explicitly celestial, winged nature than the Roman lares, who are typically bound to a specific place like a hearth or crossroads. The Lossa seem to represent a distinct Etruscan theological concept, a pervasive, friendly divine presence that served as a constant link between humanity and the higher powers. They were the friendly face of the cosmos, the proof that the gods were not entirely remote, but had sent these beautiful emissaries to walk, or rather fly, among their people. This interpretation naturally leads to a speculative question. Could the Etruscan emphasis on the Lossa reflect a cultural memory of a different kind of contact? Their consistent depiction as winged beings is highly suggestive. While wings are a common mythological symbol for divinity or speed, the Etruscans rendered them with a particular elegance and realism. Could these images be an artistic interpretation of beings equipped with advanced technology, perhaps anti-gravity devices or winged flight packs that allowed them to move with a grace that seemed supernatural? Their role as record-keepers of fate, often shown with scrolls, parallels the idea of visitors using advanced data recording devices. The fact that they were seen as teachers and guides who imparted knowledge, including the complex religious rituals of divination that the Etruscans were famous for, fits the global pattern of celestial beings acting as civilizing agents. The Lossa's prominence in Etruscan culture, a culture that was eventually absorbed by Rome, suggests that this concept of accessible, benevolent celestial intermediaries was a powerful and deeply held belief, one that may have been rooted in a distant memory of encounters with advanced, non-human intelligences who took a personal interest in guiding human destiny. From the Arthurian lakes of Britain and the intimate spirit world of the Etruscans, we now journey to the windswept, boundless steppes of Central Asia, where a spirituality was forged under the vastest of all cathedrals, the eternal blue sky. Here, among the nomadic tribes who lived in direct communion with the elements, arose Tengriism, a shamanic faith of profound simplicity and immense power, centered on the worship of Tengri, the supreme, eternal sky god. This was not a deity carved in stone or confined to temples, but an all-encompassing presence, a conscious, masculine force whose name literally means sky or heaven, and whose will was written in the movements of the sun, the moon, and the endless cycle of the seasons. The Mongolian worldview was one of sacred balance between the three realms, the upper world of the gods, the middle world of humans and nature, and the lower world of the ancestors and spirits. Tengri presided over it all, a fatherly yet distant supreme being. He was not approached with elaborate prayers from holy books, but through the intuition and skill of the shaman, the bearer, who could journey between these worlds. The core tenet of Tengriism was that personal and tribal fortune, known as Sulda or spirit, was a direct gift from Tengri, a measure of his divine favor. This favor was not granted arbitrarily. It was earned through a life lived with courage, strength, and crucially, in harmony with the natural world. To please Tengri was to live rightly, and his approval was manifested as success in hunting, fertility in herds, and victory in battle. This created a spiritual feedback loop where a leader's worldly achievements were seen as undeniable proof of their celestial mandate. It is against this backdrop that the meteoric rise of Genghis Khan becomes not just a story of military genius, but a narrative of divine selection. Born as Temujin into a world of fractious tribes and petty rivalries, his early life was one of extreme hardship, betrayal, and survival. Yet, as he began his incredible campaign to unite the Mongol peoples, a powerful legend took root. It was said that Temujin possessed Sulda, a potent spirit granted directly by Tengri himself. This was not a vague blessing. It was described as a tangible, almost magnetic force that drew followers to his banner and instilled fear in his enemies. The pivotal moment came when he summoned a great council or kurultai at the source of the Onon River. There, a powerful shaman named Teb Tengri proclaimed that Tengri had granted Temujin the title of Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler, and had decreed that the entire world would be given to him. This proclamation transformed him from a tribal chieftain into the literal sword of the sky god. His conquest no longer acts of personal ambition, but the execution of a celestial will. Genghis Khan and his successors fully embraced and leveraged this divine sanction. Before battle, they would ascend a high hill, remove their hats and belts, and offer prayers to Tengri, asking for strength and guidance. They interpreted environmental signs as direct communication. A sudden rainstorm during a difficult siege might be seen as Tengri's tears of displeasure, while a clear sky on the day of an attack was a sign of his full support. The stunning speed and success of the Mongol Empire, which at its peak stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Vienna, was understood by the Mongols themselves as the inevitable unfolding of Tengri's plan. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were the instruments of a cosmic order, tasked with bringing the entire world under the dominion of the eternal blue sky. This belief granted them an unshakable confidence and a sense of destiny that often psychologically overwhelmed their more theologically complex adversaries. The legacy of Tengriism endures as a powerful testament to a spirituality of direct experience. It presents a universe where the divine is not separate from creation but is its very fabric, where a person's worth is measured by their actions and their harmony with the natural order. The story of Genghis Khan's connection to Tengri challenges our modern, secular understanding of history, suggesting that the forces that shape human destiny may be more mysterious and interconnected than we often allow. It raises the possibility that the greatest unifiers and empire builders were not merely brilliant strategists, but individuals who, either through genuine connection or profound belief, understood themselves as agents of a celestial will, riding forth under the infinite expanse of the blue sky to fulfill a purpose written in the stars themselves. But if the legend of Viracocha suggests a gentle, teaching god, the myths of Mesopotamia present us with a far more dramatic and perilous kind of celestial drama, one that revolves around a cosmic heist with the entire universe hanging in the balance. This brings us to the epic and terrifying tale of the Zoo, a being of such immense power and audacity that it threatened to unravel the divine order itself. The story, found in fragmented Akkadian texts, centers on a creature that is a magnificent and fearsome hybrid, often depicted as a colossal storm bird or a lion-headed eagle, a symbol of untamed natural force. The Zoo was no minor deity. It was a divine being in its own right, but one possessed by an overwhelming ambition that would set the stage for a conflict of cosmic proportions. The ultimate source of power in the Mesopotamian cosmos was not a throne or a scepter, but an object of profound significance, the tablets of destiny. These were not simple stone slabs with writing on them. They were believed to be the very source code of the universe, the divine registry that contained the fates of all gods and mortals, the laws that governed the movement of the stars, the changing of the seasons, and the very fabric of reality. Whoever possessed the tablets held absolute authority over the cosmos. They were in the rightful custody of Enlil, the chief of the Sumerian pantheon, the god of wind, air, and earth. Enlil's role was to maintain order, and the tablets were the ultimate instrument of that order, kept secure in his temple. The Zoo, however, watched Enlil from a distance, and a treacherous desire grew within him. He saw that Enlil's power was not innate, but derived entirely from his possession of the tablets. The text describes the Zoo waiting for a moment of vulnerability. Each day, as part of his sacred duty, Enlil would remove his royal regalia, his crown, his robes, and wash himself in pure water. In this intimate, unguarded moment, when the symbols of his authority were set aside, the Zoo saw his chance. In a breathtaking act of defiance, the great bird swooped down, seized the tablets of destiny, and flew to his mountain eyrie, a remote and inaccessible peak where he believed he would be safe. With this single act, the zoo didn't just steal an object, he hijacked the cosmos. The fundamental laws of existence were now in the hands of a rogue entity, and the universe was plunged into a state of terrifying instability. The sun's path could waver, the rivers could flow backward, and the natural order ceased to function. A council of the gods was convened in a state of panic. The situation was dire. The one who held the tablets was, for all intents and purposes, the new ruler of the universe. Yet, one by one, the most powerful gods recoiled from the challenge. The mere thought of facing the zoo, now imbued with the absolute power of the tablets, filled them with dread. Their weapons would be useless against the being who controlled all fates. It seemed as if the zoo's coup was complete, and a new, chaotic era was about to dawn. The savior of the cosmos emerged from an unexpected quarter. It was not a major god like Enlil or Enki, but the warrior god Ninurta, the son of Enlil, who stepped forward. Ninurta, associated with farming, healing, and the south wind, was also a formidable hunter and a god of war. He volunteered to confront the usurper. But this would be no ordinary battle. The gods knew that a direct assault was doomed to failure. Instead, they devised a clever strategy, a celestial trap that relied on misdirection and psychological warfare. They gifted Ninurta with the 7 evil winds and instructed him to use not just brute force but cunning. As Ninurta approached the zoo's mountain fortress, he began a verbal duel with the creature, challenging its legitimacy and shaking its confidence. The myths suggest that the power of the tablets was not automatic. It required the wielder to have a firm, unwavering command. By sowing doubt, Ninurta weakened the zoo's mental grip on his ill-gotten power. The climax of the battle is described with thunderous intensity. As the zoo unleashed his divine rays and terrifying attacks, Ninurta loosed the 7 evil winds against him. One version of the story says that the winds blinded the great bird, causing him to drop the tablets. Another describes a mighty arrow from Ninurta's bow finding its mark. Regardless of the precise method, the outcome was the same. The tablets of destiny were recovered and the cosmic order was restored. The zoo was defeated and Ninurta was hailed as the hero who had saved the universe from a descent into absolute chaos. The legend of the zoo and the tablets of destiny is far more than a simple adventure story. On one level, it is a powerful allegory for the fragility of civilization and the constant threat that chaos poses to order. The tablets represent the rule of law, the social contracts, and the shared knowledge that hold a society together. The zoo represents the forces of anarchy, the individual or power that seeks to seize control for its own ends, disregarding the common good. The story teaches that such threats cannot be tolerated and must be confronted with both courage and wisdom. From an ancient astronaut perspective, however, the tale takes on a startlingly literal dimension. The tablets of destiny, with their ability to control the fates and the fundamental operations of the universe, sound less like a magical artifact and more like a highly advanced control device, perhaps a master computer or a terminal that interfaced with the very infrastructure of the planet. The zoo's theft of these tablets could be interpreted as a hostile takeover attempt by a renegade faction of the celestial beings. His remote mountain eyrie might have been a secondary base or a shielded location from which he attempted to hack into the system and rewrite reality to his own specifications. The gods' fear and inability to act directly could reflect the fact that their own technology was now being used against them. Ninurta's victory, achieved through a combination of targeted energy weapons, the 7 evil winds, and psychological tactics, reads like a carefully planned special operations mission to retake a critical asset. This story, etched into clay tablets thousands of years ago, presents a scenario that is eerily familiar in our modern age: a cosmic cyber attack, a struggle for control over the system that runs our world, and a hero who uses both technology and strategy to prevent a catastrophic system-wide crash. And so we arrive at our final legend, not of a single culture or a lone starfarer, but a story so universal, so deeply etched into the collective memory of humanity, that it demands we see our entire planetary history in a new light. This is the legend of the Great Flood, a cataclysm that echoes across every continent, from the deserts of the Middle East to the rainforests of the Americas, from the mountains of Greece to the plains of India. While many know the tale of Noah and his ark, few realize that this narrative is but one thread in a global tapestry of destruction and rebirth, a tapestry woven with a startlingly consistent thread: the direct intervention of celestial beings who decided to reset the world. Consider the parallels separated by vast oceans and thousands of years. In the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, the hero Utnapishtim is warned by the god E that the council of gods, led by Enlil, is disgusted with the noise and overpopulation of humanity and has voted to send a deluge to wipe them out. E, in a classic act of divine subterfuge, speaks to Utnapishtim not directly, but through the walls of his reed house, instructing him to tear down his home and build a great cube-shaped ark to take aboard his family, craftsmen, and the seed of all living things. After the flood subsides, Utnapishtim sends out a dove, then a swallow, and finally a raven which does not return, signaling the reappearance of land. He offers a sacrifice, and the gods, who have been starving without human offerings, gather around the smoke like flies. Half a world away, in the Vedas of ancient India, we hear the story of Manu, a pious man who is washing his hands in a river when a small fish swims into his hands and pleads for protection from larger fish. Manu places the fish in a jar, but it grows so rapidly he must move it to a pond, then a lake, and finally to the ocean. The fish is then revealed to be the god Vishnu in his first avatar, the Matsya. Grateful for Manu's compassion, Vishnu warns him that a great flood will soon cleanse the world of its corruption. He instructs Manu to build a massive ship and to take aboard the 7 great sages, the seeds of every plant, and a pair of every animal. When the waters rise, Vishnu as the giant fish appears, and Manu ties the ship to the god's horn with the cosmic serpent Vasuki as a rope, allowing the fish to guide them safely to the top of a mountain as the waters recede. In Greek mythology, the same pattern unfolds. Zeus, angered by the hubris and wickedness of the Bronze Age race of humans, decides to destroy them with a flood. The Titan Prometheus, the benefactor of humanity, secretly warns his mortal son, Deucalion, and instructs him to build a chest. Deucalion and his wife, Pirha, ride out the 9-day deluge inside this vessel, eventually landing on Mount Parnassus. When the waters recede, they find themselves alone in a silent, empty world. Seeking guidance on how to repopulate the earth, they receive an oracle from the goddess Themis, who tells them to throw the bones of their great mother behind them. After some confusion, they interpret Great Mother as Gaia, the earth, and her bones as stones. The stones thrown by Deucalion become men, and those thrown by Pirha become women, a new, hardy race of humans born directly from the earth itself. Even in the Americas, the Aztec legend of the 5 sons, which we explored earlier, describes the destruction of the 4th son, Nahui-atl, in a great flood that lasted 52 years, turning humans into fish. The Maya Popolvuh also tells of a flood sent by the gods to destroy a failed, wooden race of humans. These are not isolated stories, they are variations on a planetary theme. And the common elements are too specific and too widespread to be dismissed as mere coincidence. A divine council disgusted with humanity, a decision to send a cataclysmic flood. The selection of a single, righteous individual or family, detailed, technical instructions for building a survival vessel, the preservation of animal life. The grounding of the ark on a high mountain, and a new covenant or a new beginning for humanity. This is not just a myth, it is a global report. So what are we to make of this astonishing consistency? The conventional explanation from mainstream anthropology is that these stories are distant, exaggerated memories of real, localized river floods that were catastrophic for the early agricultural societies that depended on them. The Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River, these life-giving waters could also bring immense destruction. A particularly devastating flood event, perhaps around the end of the last ice age as glacial meltwaters raised sea levels, could have been mythologized over generations into a global deluge. But the ancient astronaut theory asks us to consider a far more profound and unsettling possibility. What if the flood was not a natural disaster, but a deliberate planetary-scale event? What if the gods who decided to send the flood were not metaphors for nature, but an advanced civilization or group of extraterrestrial visitors who had been monitoring human development? In this scenario, humanity had become a failed experiment, too violent, too chaotic, or perhaps too numerous. The decision to cleanse the earth was a calculated act of ecological management or a quarantine procedure. The instruction to build an ark was not a magical prophecy, but the transfer of specific survival technology, a sealed, buoyant habitat capable of withstanding a massive, perhaps even artificially induced tidal wave or sea level rise. The careful preservation of animal DNA points to a deliberate effort to salvage the planet's biosphere, to preserve the raw genetic material for a reboot. The warning given to the chosen survivors, Noah, Utnapishtim, Manu, Deucalion, could be seen as an act of mercy by a faction among these celestial beings who disagreed with the total annihilation plan. E's warning to Utnapishtim, Vishnu's help for Manu, Prometheus's tip to Deucalion, all suggest a split in the command structure of the gods, a conflict between those who saw humanity as a lost cause and those who believed we were worth saving. The survival of these individuals was not an accident. It was the result of a carefully managed salvage operation, ensuring that a seed stock of genetically untainted or morally righteous humans would survive to repopulate the world under new guidance. The global distribution of the story suggests this was not a regional event, but a true planetary cataclysm, an experience so traumatic and universally witnessed that it became the foundational memory of every surviving human culture. The legend of the Great Flood, therefore, serves as the ultimate culmination of our journey through these 30 ancient legends. It ties together every theme we have encountered: celestial beings with godlike power, direct intervention in human evolution, advanced technology, and a forgotten chapter of our past where the fate of the world was decided not by chance but by design. It suggests that our history is not a simple, linear progression from primitivism to civilization, but a cycle of creation, destruction, and rebirth, orchestrated by intelligences from beyond our world. As we look out at a modern world facing its own potential cataclysms, from climate change to the threat of nuclear war, the ancient flood myths stand as a stark and haunting reminder. They tell us that humanity has been here before, that our world has been reset, and that our survival may once again depend on heeding a warning from the stars. Now that we have journeyed across continents and through millennia, a breathtaking pattern emerges from the seeming chaos of myth. It's a pattern so consistent, so deeply woven into the fabric of our collective past, that it ceases to look like coincidence and begins to resemble a blueprint. Cultures that, according to conventional history, had no possible contact with one another: the Sumerians in their river valleys, the Maya in their jungles, the Dogon in their remote cliffs, the Aboriginal Australians on their isolated continent, all tell fundamentally the same story. They all speak of beings who came from the sky, the stars, or the waters, and who fundamentally altered the course of human destiny. When we place these 30 legends side by side, a series of common themes emerges with the clarity of a constellation against a dark sky, pointing toward a single, staggering possibility. The most pervasive theme is that of the gift-bringer, the celestial teacher. This is not a minor detail, it is the very core of the narrative. in Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki bestow the arts of civilization, agriculture, law, and writing. In Mesoamerica, Kukulkan delivers the knowledge of maize cultivation, mathematics, and the complex calendar. The Dogons Nomo impart precise astronomical data about the Sirius system. The Hopis Kachinas teach the rituals for survival in a harsh desert environment. Across the board, these beings are not depicted as conquerors seeking slaves, but as instructors with a curriculum. They provide the essential toolkit for humanity to evolve from a hunter-gatherer existence to an organized society. This suggests a deliberate, planned intervention, a sort of cosmic tutoring program designed to accelerate our development. The gifts are not random. They are precisely what a primitive species would need to make the leap to civilization, hinting that the gods had a clear understanding of our potential and the path required to unlock it. Another universal thread is the cycle of creation and destruction, a theme that paints human history as a series of experiments rather than a linear progression. The Aztec legend of the Five Suns is the most explicit, describing 4 previous worlds, each with its own dominant species and each destroyed by a different cataclysm: jaguars, wind, fire, and flood before our current age. This echoes the Sumerian story of the Anunnaki creating a first, flawed race of giants before fashioning modern humans. And of course, the legend of a great flood is arguably the most widespread story on Earth, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the tales of Manu in India and Deucalion in Greece. This recurring motif of a planetary reset implies that our celestial visitors may have been monitoring our progress over vast stretches of time, periodically intervening to correct a failed experiment or to cleanse the world of a civilization that had become corrupt or dangerous. It frames our existence not as a unique event, but as the latest chapter in a long, and perhaps ongoing, process of guided evolution. Perhaps the most biologically provocative pattern is the theme of hybridization, the creation of offspring between celestial beings and humans. The biblical account of the Nephilim, the sons of God, who intermarried with the daughters of men to produce a race of giants, is a prime example. But this idea is not confined to the Abrahamic traditions. The Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki mixing their genetic essence with that of a primitive hominid to create Homo sapiens as a worker species. The global fascination with giants in folklore, from the Cyclopes of Greece to the large-statured beings in Native American legends, could be a cultural memory of these early hybrid experiments. This theme directly challenges the prevailing view of human origins, proposing that our sudden cognitive leap, the so-called Great Leap Forward, was not a slow evolutionary process but the result of a deliberate genetic upgrade, an intelligent design event that separated us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Finally, we have the stunningly consistent descriptions of celestial vehicles. These are not vague references to light or spirit, they are detailed mechanical accounts. The Vimanas of India are described as structured flying palaces made of metal, powered by mercury vortex engines and capable of incredible speeds and invisibility. The Greek gods arrive in chariots of fire that shake the ground and radiate blinding light. The Norse gods traverse the cosmos on an 8-legged steed or a burning rainbow bridge. The Dogon described the Nomo's ark as a spinning vessel that landed with fire and thunder. Even the solar bark of Ra, which seems symbolic, is given a physical, seaworthy counterpart buried beside the Great Pyramid. This global focus on the means of travel is crucial. It suggests that ancient witnesses were not simply imagining ethereal spirits, but were describing what they saw: advanced aerospace technology. The consistency in describing these vehicles as noisy, luminous, and physically tangible points to a shared experience of observing real, engineered machines, the operation of which was so far beyond their understanding that it could only be explained as divine power. When we weave these 4 themes together, the gift of knowledge, the cycles of destruction and rebirth, the genetic intervention, and the advanced vehicles, a coherent narrative begins to take shape. It is a narrative of visitation of a non-human intelligence that has been intimately involved with our planet for a very long time. This is not a random collection of fairy tales, it is a global testimony. The sheer geographical and cultural distance between these stories rules out the possibility of a single story spreading through migration. Instead, it points to a common source, a shared experience etched into the memory of our species. These legends are the fragments of a lost history, a cosmic blueprint that suggests we are not alone, and that our past is far richer, stranger, and more profoundly connected to the stars than we have ever dared to believe. From the Sumerian tablets to the Aboriginal rock art, the evidence for humanity's enduring fascination with celestial beings is literally written in stone. These 30 legends, spanning every corner of our world, are far more than just imaginative stories. They are the very bedrock of our cultures, the foundation upon which we have built our understanding of the universe and our place within it. They have given rise to our greatest religions, inspired our most magnificent art and architecture, and even fueled our relentless drive to push beyond the atmosphere and explore the stars for ourselves. This global chorus of ancient voices presents us with a profound and enduring mystery, one that demands we consider the possibilities with an open mind. So where does that leave us? After this epic journey through time and across continents, we are faced with three primary ways to interpret this incredible body of evidence. The first, and most widely accepted in academic circles, is that these are powerful metaphors. In this view, the celestial beings are personifications of natural forces, the sun, the storm, the fertile rain, or psychological archetypes representing our inner struggles and aspirations. The great floods are symbolic of personal or societal renewal, and the gods are simply a way for ancient peoples to make sense of a vast and often terrifying world. This perspective sees myth as the primitive precursor to science and philosophy, a beautiful but ultimately fictional framework for understanding reality. A second interpretation suggests that these stories are the result of misunderstood natural phenomena. Imagine a culture with no knowledge of comet trajectories witnessing a brilliant fireball streaking across the sky, or a people experiencing a volcanic eruption for the first time. The thunderous noise, the ash cloud that blots out the sun, the rivers of fire, such events could easily be interpreted as the actions of angry, warring gods. A particularly devastating earthquake or tsunami could become the basis for a global flood legend, passed down and embellished over generations until the original event is lost, leaving only the cataclysmic story. Yet there is a third possibility, one that grows more compelling the deeper we delve into the consistency of the accounts. This is the idea that these legends are a hidden chapter in human history, a fragmented but real record of contact with a non-human intelligence. When we look past the cultural dressing, the feathers, the fire, the animal hybrids, we find a core narrative that is astonishingly consistent. Beings arriving in advanced vehicles, imparting knowledge, intervening in our genetics, and sometimes deciding to reset the entire experiment. The sheer specificity in descriptions of technology, from the mercury-powered Vimanas to the genetic engineering of the Anunnaki, challenges the notion that these are purely symbolic. The fact that cultures separated by oceans and millennia describe such similar events points toward a common experience, not independent invention. Ultimately, the true power of these legends may not lie in proving one theory over another, but in what they reveal about us. They are a testament to humanity's insatiable curiosity, our deep-seated need to ask, where did we come from, and are we alone? These stories have shaped who we are. They are the reason we gaze at the night sky with a sense of wonder, the reason we send rovers to Mars and telescopes to the edge of the observable universe. We are, in a very real sense, the children of these myths, forever searching for our celestial parents. The conversation is far from over. What do you think? Are these ancient accounts merely stories, the product of vivid imaginations, or do they point to a truth more extraordinary than we have yet dared to accept? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this journey to the edge of history, be sure to subscribe for more explorations into the